Hey there, everybody. So it says we're live. Hopefully we are, and I'm going to confirm in a second. But I'm Carlos from Because I'm Carlos on this channel. And today we're going to have ourselves a little hobby chat. We're going to hang out. And my buddy Ameet here is going to join me for a little bit of a discussion. Ameet, how are you?
Good. How are you, buddy?
I am doing well. I'm doing well. So we actually started having a little bit of a chat. We had a little bit of a nostalgic moment. I was having a little bit of fun kind of opening an MVP blaster that if any of you saw me on Sports Cards Live, you saw that I got this from Amazon, basically for retail. So it was just very convenient and handy. I was ordering some stuff anyway, and they shipped it to me. So the future is already now. If you don't like the fact that you can't find retail, now mind you, it is MVP. It's not exactly a high-end brand, but there are options out there to distribute it in different ways. But one of the things that I noted about this is that the Upper Deck has gone kind of cheap on us, not even putting foil in it. I know it's a low-end brand, but like the old one, which is also a low-end brand, had foil. But that kind of led us into kind of a fun little discussion that what you really are going to find with a lot of these things is that we're reaching into the archives to find the old design. Like Topps Heritage is already doing that. They've been doing it for years. But I was just telling Ameet that my dream is I just want Topps Heritage to hang in so long that they do 1990 Topps. It would just be great. Everybody trying to take it seriously. Oh my God, so retro. And I'm like, oh my God, 1990 Topps. That would just be fantastic.
And I could still smell the Heritage packs. It was a waxy pack, wasn't it? The Heritage Hockey? Wasn't it a waxy pack?
Yeah, they did. They put the gum inside of a plastic thing, and you can actually open it.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. But at least if you bought it at the time, at least the gum was edible.
Oh, don't worry. I ate tons of it. Don't worry.
Yeah, like it was fine for what it was.
It was like Jiggly Chew Hockey Wax Pack Edition.
Exactly. All right, so we've got a couple of folks here joining us. Of course, this guy, I already referenced that YouTube channel, so we know who this is. Jeremy, how are you? And we got Brian here. Brian, how are you too? Awesome. So yeah, we're just going to kind of sit back and chat. The only thing, I'll tell everybody ahead of time, the only thing that I kind of quote unquote planned, and it's just because it makes sense, is I would definitely, in the course of this conversation, I'm going to talk to Ameet a little bit about COMC because he knows a thing or two about COMC. So we can definitely discuss that a little bit. But it's going to be kind of open-ended, guys. So I'll start talking to Ameet, but just so you know, if you got like a comment or a question, something you think might be interesting or you'd like us to discuss, if it makes sense, I'll throw it in there. We can definitely talk about it. Why not? So 1 second here. There you go. There you go. Paul C. This is the answer to the question. What is there to do for fun on a Sunday night in Black Falls, Alberta? There you go. I like it. And I like this. I like this name here too. Ameet's friend. Greetings from Ameet's friend.
I have anonymous friends. That's great. That must be who I get my Christmas cards from.
There you go. Live the dream. I like it. Sounds good. So yeah. So those of you that are here, like I said, you're more than welcome to participate. This is definitely open-ended. The agenda is very light, but we definitely can we can chat for a little while about a lot of different things. So one of the things that I definitely want to look at first, I'm not going to do the whole big long intro, but Ameet's been in the game for a little while. He's been collecting for a year or two at least, maybe a little longer. But let's do this. I won't spend too much time in the background of Ameet, but I think you may have mentioned it before, just so we're clear. What's the first product you remember actually opening in packs? What's the first one?
First one I ever opened was Club 8182 OPT. That's what I can remember from way back in the day, and that set brings tears to my eyes. That set, I remember that set so well. It's just such a classic set.
And it was a good time though when you get that '80s hockey. You've got a lot of the legends of the game were there. It wasn't like the first year Gretzky, but it was third year Gretzky. Like it wasn't that far removed from right at the beginning of that Edmonton dynasty. They were smack in the middle of it, and there were some great players and teams on there.
I remember leaving my house. I lived in Newfoundland at the time. Yes, I'm a Newfoundland, born and raised and proud.
Oh, there's a million jokes now that I have. Thank you.
You can go for it. Us tough guys, we can handle it. I remember in the wintertime, it was like heavy winters back then. I live in the Avalon Peninsula, and we had to walk from my house to literally the gas station / corner store / restaurant / pizza place on the corner. And I would go there with my 35 cents or whatever it is to buy the packs. And I would go get one pack at a time. Like, think about that. One pack at a time with 35, 45, whatever, 50 cents it costs. Mm-hmm. And you come back home and you would just, and opening the wax paper and just the crimpling of the paper and the smell. It's so good.
There you go. There's some serious nostalgia going on there. Now here's the question. In my house, we did it a little differently. My dad enjoyed being sadistic. So he knew that I like opening the packs. So what he would do is he'd actually buy a small stack of them. But I would get to open one at a time. They were at the top of the refrigerator beyond reach. That was the way this game was played. So it's like, I knew they were there. They'd be stacked up. And he goes, no, you're getting one at a time. It'll be dull. So I didn't have to go to the store to go they're all right at the top of the refrigerator, but you're not getting them. You're not getting them until the time is right. So they got doled out. We got rations. I got sports card rations for a while.
Some people got food rations. You got card rations.
I got card rations. That's how that went. Unfortunately, my card rations was 1991 Donruss. Not nearly as nostalgic. That didn't work out quite so well. Not nearly as great, I'm afraid. Yeah, but hey, it is what it is. I think everybody gets their start at different. I would say though, before PAX, the thing for me the first thing wasn't PAX. It was like those little, those like little collector sets they would make where they would give you like a random assortment of cards.
Yeah.
So before PAX, I would get a couple of those, so you could just sort them through, and they'd be random. So speaking of 1990 tops, there'd definitely be in there. 89 tops was a big one. 88 tops, 88 Donruss, 89 Donruss. A lot of those late 80s. The stuff that's the oversaturated junk wax, that was stacked up to the sky inside of those things, a couple of 100 cards at a time.
We used to talk about wax. I used to go with my mom shopping, and I can't remember the name of the grocery store. But Nielsen's had the blue bordered Gretzky cards. Mm-hmm. You had to buy. I think it was a chocolate. So you buy the chocolate, and in the back of the chocolate was a card. Mm-hmm. And I remember I begged my mom, I just want those cards. Just want those cards, and she would buy me the chocolate, and then I would get the comic books, the really non-PC version of comic books back then,
right?
Slaughter or whatever it is back then, and get those and come home and read my comics and open up those Nielsen's Gretzky cards, and I still have them. I cannot part with them.
Yeah, but that's the thing. That's and we talked to a little bit about that on the after hours last night. Is that the nostalgia is like so key to getting adults talking about the hobby at this stage. Mm-hmm. Like the only way this is going to work is you have to have these memories that we just described. Even the stupid 91 Donruss. And I actually, part of me despises 91 Donruss because it's such a crummy set.
Such a terrible set.
It is just horrifically bad. But at the same time, it was the set that I opened the first packs from. So it will always have at least that nostalgic value, even if it has no other value whatsoever.
Is that the blue border or the red border? Which one was that one?
1990 is the one you're thinking about with the red border. Yeah. And they had a blue border that was like a box set.
Yeah.
Which the one is, there was a green and a blue border that was 91. So Series 1 and Series 2, depending on what series it was, you either got the green one or the blue in that year. But it was still, to be honest, it was an aesthetically ugly set. The checklist was fine because you had a good representation of all the players. But for some bizarre reason, I would pull Eddie Murray like in every second pack. At one point, I had a literal stack. It's like, I get a good assortment of everybody else, but I'd be sitting like, can I have Ken Griffey Jr.? No, you can have Eddie Murray. Oh, come on. Just pack after pack.
The Upper Deck series. Like, what year was Ben McDonald?
I think 1990.
So that was like the first time I saw a high quality set. So that has a lot of memories too. I bought baseball, and I didn't know baseball from anything back then. It was just hockey, and I bought it because it looked good. I just really like that pack.
Well, I would say 89 obviously is the iconic one. Everybody knows like 89 Upper Deck. But I would say 1990 Upper Deck, obviously they printed way more, which messed the whole thing up. But I thought 1990 Upper Deck actually is a good looking set because you had a gigantic picture on it. Like you had a really large picture. The white border is simple and all, I get that. But it's like Upper Deck was very simple in those first couple of years anyway. By 91, they made it look a little bit more interesting, but they printed even more of 91. They even went even further off the deep end.
No, that's true. That's true.
But 1990, I thought was still pretty good.
I realized something. I didn't know about baseball back then. I followed the Jays back since '85, so I would say it's the first time I knew a baseball product. I didn't know anything about baseball products. So just to clarify that.
Mm-hmm. No, that's fair. But that's kind of where nostalgia takes you. Now, let me ask you this, and then we'll lead out of this one. So playing on the whole nostalgia thing, we talked about a little bit last night. I don't know the part you ended up catching, but one of the things we talked about last night towards the end was the whole idea about the next generation. The question becomes, does the current generation, again, I argued that there are less kids around than there were, around the time that you would have been a kid collecting cards or the time that I was a kid collecting cards, because there were a fair number of kids in my school and things like that collected cards. I don't think that demographic necessarily plays today. But regardless, let's say it does for the sake of argument. Is there enough attachment with, I got a little bit of pushback saying, oh, there's always been other options and distractions and things for kids. But I find it hard to believe that the kid that is born with one of these in their hand and plays around with touchscreens and things first before they ever get to the tactile thing like a card necessarily is going to have the same attachment. What do you think about that one?
I also think that nowadays kids actually don't get to be kids. There's so many pressures and outside pressures, inside pressures, social media pressures. Now kids, like when we were playing hockey growing up, there was like maybe one or two very special kids that got all the attention. Now you got kids that are 6 years old and going to specialty training camps. Like kids don't really get a chance to be kids. So I say that nostalgic factor. Sometimes parents forget they got to give their kids a chance to be nostalgic, right?
Pokemon. I think you're hitting on something really good here. I think because one thing is you're talking about structure. Yes. It's almost like you plan out what the kids are going to do so much that the spontaneity is not. It's not. I had time to play around with 1991 Donruss because I didn't have my entire day structured for me.
Yeah, like look at my kids. If I take my kids for example, before COVID, it's very structured. On Saturday morning, 6:30 a.m. we had hockey practice, and then you had a break. And then I took the youngest to gymnastics, and when gymnastics were done, we went and did something else until about 6 o'clock came, and then they're exhausted, right? When I grew up, my dad literally opened up the back door. It's like, I'll see you at lunch. And then I come home for lunch. And then he'd open the door again, and I'll see you at dinner time. And in the 2, 3, 4 hours in between there, I learned about a hockey card. I learned how to catch whatever mice or whatever in the backyard, or I learned how to climb a tree, or really badly, you might catch something on fire for fun. But that's a different story. We won't go there.
That continues to this day. But no, the point you're making though is that time, even though your dad wasn't structuring everything for you, it left room for you to do things like exploring cards and whatever, where that isn't available. Your kids don't have the time. Everything's already figured out. Where's the time left?
There's that. Now the other flip side is advertising wise, they've got you down to a science. They know what the kid supposedly wants, and it's already predetermined for the kid what they're going to play with. Right? So there's a lot of less leeway for children to kind of learn things organically. So that's a responsibility of our parents to give our kids that joy to do that. And I'll give you a very realistic example. Okay. So my son is a huge Marvel and Star Wars nut because I took the time to explain it to him, right? Read him the books, took him to the movies. And I found one of those 1990s junk wax Impel brand Marvel cards, which shows the hero, the statistics, how heavy they are, who their enemies are. He sat down in my backyard and read those entire series. It's like 300-400 cards. I could be lying. I don't know how many are in there, but there's a lot. And now he's asking me questions. Hey, Dad, you know that Wolverine's enemy is so and so and blah blah blah. Like I gave him the chance to sink his teeth into something, and now he has a memory. Hopefully, we remember something else. Anyway, that's a long-winded answer to your question, but yeah.
Yeah, but that's the only way it's going to work. So let me quickly just get a couple comments here from Paul because he's got a couple. So early Upper Deck had a minimalist beauty. I think you're hitting the nail on the head. That's the first couple of Upper Deck sets were really simple. But to be honest, if it's a good picture that you're using, decent photography, it can work. That's why the first couple of Upper Deck sets, I was all right with it because I thought they did a good job picking those photos. And then here regarding the structuring here, reffing ball hockey, one team of 9 to 10 years executing the left wing block, the 1-3-1 defense. It's like, yeah, the thing is there's a lot of stuff to do. The point that kids before had stuff to do was true, but again, that structuring is a real thing because, like I said, my dad was around always, but at the same time, he believed in like, look, you do your thing. You want to come over and check out what I'm doing? Cool, that's fine. I'll show you. I'll explain it to you, whatever. But he was very much like, I'm not going to sit there and just lord over you and watch everything you're doing. I expect you to be able to figure out some of this on your own, and then if you need help, come get me.
Yeah.
And that's how you learned. So it allowed room to figure this stuff out. So when I went to go play baseball, that was my dad didn't play baseball, but he knew how to play baseball. He actually understood the fundamentals better than the coaches who tried to coach us baseball because he'd play stickball and things when he was in Panama as a kid.
Yeah.
But for him, it was never a structured game. He didn't play in the league. But then he'd go to the coach's game and he hit a home run at his first at bat. So he knew the general idea behind what to do better than the guys who had been certified trainers to play the game.
100%. I mean, when I grew up in Newfoundland, I was in a really small town called Carbonear, and we used to have town versus town hockey matches where like the local kids had their own version of their hockey team, right? And we would go play the other half of the town, actually the same town. But we'd go play the northern guy, the southern guy, and we'd have baseball tournaments. And man, it was vicious, but it was fun, man. We learned our own thing back then.
But I'm an advocate for that. I love this the shameless plug. So I had to give it while you were giving that story, like the shamelessness of it. See, Jeremy, I approve of the shamelessness. That is why I want to promote the shamelessness. The more shameless, the better. See, Josh knows what I'm talking about here. There you go. They know a good shameless plug when they see it. I approve. I approve of shameless plugs.
I do.
Absolutely. But no, but I think you're right. But because like the reality is, but that's what makes it really interesting. To your point, though, you gave the example of your kids when you were talking about the marble thing, though. So have they taken up collecting? Because you're a collector, a longtime collector. Have they really taken up collecting?
Yeah, they have their own binder sheets.
Mhm.
They have their own cards. They have their own commons.
Mhm.
They haven't quite graduated to jersey cards and autographs yet, but they know what they are. But they have their own sets and they play with them all the time. They have their own snap cases. They'll sit. What I like about it is they'll actually sit and actually promote reading. So I'm like, well, why don't you read the cards? And he'll actually read. But now he's a fiend about reading. He reads everything. So it's kind of fostered another way of educating them, right? And also they get a piece of me if they're collecting. That's such a popular point.
Yeah, exactly. And the potential's there. Like they're useful for that. It's fun. To me, I think that's your best shot. But that was the point I was trying to make earlier is that just think about what you just described. You had to put in the effort to lay the groundwork to allow this to occur. When I was a kid, it was a lot more organic. I initiated everything. My parents didn't really collect. So they didn't have, my parents really never had the collecting gene to that degree. They had their own things they enjoyed doing, their own hobbies and things like that. But it never really fell in line. And my younger brother doesn't like sports at all. So like there's no connection to anything related to it. It was like it had to be completely when I went to go play baseball, it had to be self-initiated. When I went to go collect cards, it had to be self-initiated. Maybe that's why I'm a little less dependent upon what other people are doing to do it, because right from the get-go, it's like I have to initiate all the action. If it's going to happen, it's going to have to start with me. But for a lot of these kids, it's like, well, it doesn't hurt to at least have a little bit of a nudge to kind of help in that direction, because there's enough distraction. If you don't help them a little, they could go in any direction, which way.
You just reminded me of a super, super fun memory I had forgotten about. So my dad passed in December.
Okay.
So that was a fairly difficult thing that happened for me and my family. Well, me especially. It's still trying to get over the grieving process.
Mm-hmm.
You reminded me of something so critical. So one of my greatest joys, I used to love showing. I bring my cards out when my dad and his brothers would be over for a couple of beers and watch the game. And they would have their own memories looking at the cards I was giving to them. Mm-hmm. Oh, remember when this guy was traded to the Leafs, and like, oh, this knucklehead, and like I would give them the card and was spurring a whole conversation with them. So I was almost helping my dad and his brothers have a piece to talk about when they were playing, when we were watching hockey. So it's kind of an interesting segue how hockey cards is it's like a thin red line in my life. It goes to my kids. I had a chance to talk to my dad. It's a very sentimental thing for me. No,
that's fair. It's fair. And condolences on your dad. But kind of what you're laying out there, though, is that means that's a connection that tethers you to the hobby in a very strong way. That's not a link that's going to get severed very easily. No. It's the analogy I used was bedrock versus quicksand. A lot of the new people that are hopping in right now are in quicksand because the ground's very unstable. They may jump at any time. Yeah. But if you're on bedrock, you're solid. You're already ingrained in. You're here.
You remember the Simpsons reference with the sure-footed goat?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the thing is, that's real. But that's how this works. Is that if you're solidly here, then the waves and things that happen in the market, the prices, and you're going to be standing there going like, "This too shall pass," just like everything else. And then we'll have this discussion in 5 years or 10 years, and it'll be the similar kind of thing. And there'll be people, cursing at the cloud up, yelling to get kids off the lawn, whatever. And it's like, yep, we did this already, and we're going to do it again and again. And that's just how it's going to be. Yeah. And that's okay. But that also kind of centers you. So it's like, yeah, I'm not freaking out about it because, guys, we already did this. This is a rerun. It's a rerun. I've seen the show. But, yeah. So I can actually kind of segue from here because now, so as you went along, to your point, we started off with the hockey cards, and you were opening those packs and you have those memories with it, which is great. But then also, as you go along, I find that with most collectors, there's seasons, right? Like a lot of us start off as maybe set collectors. That's usually kind of the starting point. Not always, but generally speaking, that's a decent starting point for most folks. And maybe they gravitate then to players. I went the player collector route. That was my way. But there are team collectors. There are folks that just like memorabilia and stuff. You have more of an eclectic thing where you just kind of look for what catches your eye.
Yeah.
But just before that, did you go from sets to something else and then get to what catches your eye, or was there something in between?
No, I don't have the patience to collect sets. I may have ADHD at some level, but
Mhm.
I can't get myself to collect an entire set. I go for what I want in the set, and I like opening packs. Like sometimes I would open up packs and leave it in a pile, and I would completely forget about it after a while. I'm gonna go back to it, and like, oh, I'm rediscovering my packs that I opened. I remember a friend of mine would really hate. He would come and see my card, and all the packs were still in the box. I'd rip open and put them back in, and just put it back on one side. From there, I graduated to like my favorite players, like Gretzky, Wendell Clark. So not so much sets. I went right into player collecting, and then later on into the oddball pieces that I like. And I like the Supremes from Upper Deck that I really like. And then as I got older, I got more and more nostalgic, so I started collecting the PSA 10 versions of the 81, 82 OPC set. So whenever I those. So yeah, it is all over the place. It's actually it's somewhat a little bit insane.
But you do have that. So basically, you're saying though that for the 80, you said 80, 81 or 81, 82?
81, 82.
Yeah. So for 81, 82 though, you are technically collecting the set.
That's true. And Supreme,
like you're piecing it together. Obviously, PSA 10s. It's not like you're going to find all of them in one shot. It takes work. It's kind of this slow progression. But it has a set that has at least some sentimental value to you. It's a set you like, and yeah. But that is a journey. Then that's going to be kind of a longer term build. How far along are you on that one now?
I haven't tracked it in a while, but I think I'm halfway. So I've got half the set.
It's not bad.
And then for the Supremes, I have like close to 300 to 400 of them. I stopped. I got so bad at keeping my checklist updated. I haven't even gone back and looked at those. The one thing I do have a lot of, and too much of, is, like I told you, I was a Wendell Clark collector. So I have umpteen billion versions of his Artifacts jersey patches, and I've got umpteen billion versions of his Foundations jersey cards. And whenever I see them, my heart skips a beat, and I have to pay for it. And I'm just hope that it's not something expensive, but I'll pull the trigger.
Okay.
You out there, please don't take advantage of me. Anyways, yeah. So then the other oddball pieces I have is I love was it Updeck Gowdy or Goodwin Champion? I can't remember. That has the presidential pieces in it. I have like Woodrow Wilson or something. His chair, piece of wood of him.
I feel like Goodwin Champions. That sounds like Goodwin Champions to me.
Yeah. So something. So I collect oddball things like that. Like I just find things neat. I'll pick them up. Why not?
That's fair. So, it's one of those things where you're going to get different kinds of collectors in here. And that's kind of the reason why I like talking to folks that just don't do the same thing. Because it would be easy for me to just talk to another player collector because that's easy. I know that world, I know that route, and I know that path. But then you get all these different experiences. It's a little bit more fun to have a little bit of variety in there. Now, there are a lot of avenues to go get the cards. Obviously, let's segue into COMC here for a little bit. And that's obviously one. I know COMC mainly as a buyer because I find it a great avenue to pick up a lot of these cards. As a player collector, the $2 or $3 or $4 Medanos, I'm not going to go on eBay because then with shipping, it's totally not worth it for me. But being able to get the singles and being able to pick them up and then consolidating the shipping later on tends to be kind of a win for me as a buyer. Now, you obviously do a little bit of that, but you have yourself a whole COMC port and you do it as a seller as well.
Yeah.
So what was kind of your experience? What did you like or not like about COMC as a platform?
The biggest thing I like about COMC, and it's a bit of a joke between a couple of friends of mine, is the cards I don't want are not in my house. They're not taking up space in my house. They're over at COMC, so I can play with them whenever I want, go and look at them, price them for sale, but they're not on my shelf. So I've got more room in my house. The other thing I like about COMC is I treat it like a stock market. I love checking out who's hot, who's not, seeing what cards are moving, what cards are not moving, and eventually if I can flip some of those cards, I can buy cards I really want for my PC and then ship them back to myself. So it's kind of a win-win from that perspective. The other thing I like about COMC, it's a great photo library. You ever want to find any reference for any photos or any images, go to COMC. You want to find out what the cards are in the set, go to COMC. It's like your one-stop reference for everything. And also, if you want to see how many, Zygmunt Palffy rookie cards there are, I think there's a high count of those on there. You want to go see how many cards, you can see how many were overproduced during the 90s junk wax era. Go ahead and take a look at how many Ziggy Palffy rookies there are from Upper Deck on COMC. And that's also giving you a bit of education.
No, absolutely. And I think they also have started accumulating. They've had for a while, but now they accumulate that market data where if you have that, you pay that extra, you also get a little bit of your previous sales. So it's just another data tool to be able to tell you, hey guys, this is what it's been selling for the last whatever period of time.
Yep.
And it gives you a bit of a sense. So just for everybody, I want to make sure as we're talking about it here, I'll just put it on the screen. So there you go. I got COMC there, and I will shamelessly put my player on here. But it's an example. But this is recently added. So it's just a COMC website. If you've never been to it, it's basically like it's a platform. It's just another avenue to get your cards from. But like I said, from the buyer's perspective, the advantage is that you can scroll through this, you can see examples at different price points. This is just newly added, but you can also sort through these other ones. I'm not going to go through the whole website for you. I'm not on. If they want to sponsor me, they're more than welcome to. But outside of that, I'm not going to do all their work for them. But at the same time, there's a lot of cards on here. It's not like a couple. And you've got the ability to filter this thing like crazy. You can just focus on Minnesota North Stars cards just for Medano there. And that'll be old and new. Because if he happens to be in Minnesota North Star uniform on a modern card, so be it. It's there. So it's pretty decent as far as the ability to search. That's kind of huge as well. But then what I want to talk about a little bit as well. So from the buyer perspective, that makes a lot of sense for me. And from the seller perspective, obviously, you already mentioned, it gets the stuff out of your house. So that has a huge advantage. So I'll just stop sharing here for a second.
The other advantage, they do all the work for you, right? When they ship the cards, sell the cards on your behalf. So that's also a big selling point.
Absolutely, exactly. And now they've really incorporated that the auction section as well, the ability to transfer it into an auction. So then suddenly it's available on the eBay platform as well. So they become a consignor for you basically on eBay. And as a buyer, one of the things that I haven't played around with it yet, but I know that it's available under the right circumstances, you can link the accounts so that you can buy something in the auction and then have it transferred to your COMC holdings so that you can ship it later without having to pay the ridiculous shipping cost.
Correct. Yep.
Which is actually a nice feature. That's actually really useful to be able to then transfer the cards very easily. So that's kind of a cool thing. So just Paul here made a mention here that he follows you through the Facebook COMC group. And he goes, what would you advise someone considering starting out on COMC? So that's a question for you. What do you think? I
would say the first thing you got to do is look for something you enjoy a lot and try and look up what cards you have that are available that you can pick up for your collection. I would never advise anyone to go there to strictly to flip cards. You have to understand the cards and enjoy the cards, know the market really well before you start diving in, because you can lose a lot of money really quickly by buying the wrong stuff. I would definitely go with what your sports you like, what players you like. Buy those first and understand the platform. And if you don't have anything that you really want to buy, just play around, buy a few cards and see how it works and to see how easy it is to use. The UI is fantastic.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of it that I like. Now, one key point that I'll make for someone who's newer to it, we got to remember, yes, you can go out and pick some cards and buy them and put them into a shopping cart and just buy them straight up. Early on in my very earliest COMC purchases, right at the very beginning, I did it that way. So I would buy like individual groups of cards and ship them individually. Yeah. But where you start harnessing the power of it is when you have your account and then you put some money in the account so that you can then keep the holdings until you've consolidated it a little bit. And then, yes, you will pay more for your shipping. But like comparison to doing 50 transactions on eBay and paying shipping for each individual transaction, it's actually a lot less when you start crunching those numbers.
100%. And the one thing I will tell people is the COMC is an American account. So it's US dollars. So if you're a Canadian, be mindful of that. You're going to pay the exchange to convert those funds over there through PayPal. So what you're paying for $1 is $1.40. So just be aware of that you're playing in a foreign currency, and that can hurt in one way or another if you're not careful.
Absolutely. Now let me do a couple of comments here because I want to follow up because, like I said, now that we're in COMC, we're well in your wheelhouse, and I think there's some good stuff we can talk about here a little bit as well. So let's, like I said, I approve of shameless plugs, Ameet. Shameless the better. So you ready for it? Here we go. Much thanks to Rich Klein of COMC for building the database and card identification. By the way, Rich was a guest on episode 40 of Sports Card Live. Like I said, I appreciate the shamelessness. I do. I enjoy it. So here we go.
One thing I will say that if you want to put that comment at Rich Klein, so just to give a shout out to Sports Card Live for actually showing and bringing Rich Klein on, the database and card identification is top notch. I highly approve of it, and it's so stimulating for someone to go out and buy stuff and look at it and find things easily. Another plug. I did 3 plugs there, so just so you know.
What you should have done is you should have done the thumbs up and the wink. Yeah, exactly. You got to do it. The loquacious Rich Klein. Beautiful, Paul. Beautiful. That's some fine work right there.
You're getting into hockey lingo. He's a beauty. He's a beauty.
Well done. So you say you're a COMC beast. Now you know.
I don't know. I have a mysterious friend.
There you go. They say they're your friends, so we're going to have to roll with it. Now, here's the thing. This is one area, again, I haven't played with it much, so I'm curious if you have. I know for a fact that one of the things you can do, like I said, I haven't played with it, but it does give you the option. So say you are Canadian and, obviously eBay's shipping thing is torturous, but they do provide the ability for you to kind of have almost the equivalent of like a PO address. You can actually have them shipped to COMC. I haven't played around with this myself, but I think you're familiar with it. Yep. And then it could be absorbed into the system. Obviously, there's fees incurred with it, but compared to like eBay's shipping, international shipping thing, it's not so bad comparatively. And then it would be in your port or your holdings, and you could potentially ship it to yourself later as part of your regular shipment.
I've done that. So because I'm in Canada, and we had a few. So global shipping program is an issue. Then there's other fees that you come into if it comes across the border, and you still pay that eventually, but it's easier to go through COMC. So I have it shipped to COMC, and when they ship it to you, they take care of all of that, and that comes out of your account at that time, and I find that easier to deal with. But it's a super handy feature to have a PO box, not a PO box, but a COMC address you can send everything to on both the Canadian and the US side. So that's a huge perk. It's very similar to Get It Shipped International. I don't know if some of the people that use that, but it's kind of the same idea. They handle everything for you and they'll process it for a fee.
Yeah. Now, one thing that I think does complicate it, and we have to be, like I said, as much fun as we're having with, giving COMC their free plugs and promotion, we also have to factor in that right now in COVID times, the turnaround time of some of this is slow. Like if you go standard shipping right now, I think the last date I saw on one, like I'm not planning on shipping anything to myself right now, but if I was, I'd be looking at like January. So it's like, that's kind of the estimated time. They might be able to do better than that, but that's kind of the estimated. It's like months and months in the future.
The funny part is I actually have stuff in my stuff to be shipped that's been there for 2 years. I just haven't brought myself around to getting it shipped to myself, and I'm okay because I'm fairly confident that they're good at holding my cards until I'm ready. And I have probably 200 to 300, no, probably 400 to 500 cards that I purchased that I will ship to me eventually. But you are right, shipping time is a bit slow on there. But I know from my contacts over at COMC, they're working through that right now. Things are going to get better from their perspective. Again, I don't work for them, but we have to cut them a bit of slack. COVID screwed a lot of things, right down from postage delays to supplies. You can't even get enough plastics to ship the cards out. People are doing crazy things like they're top loading every single card they want just so they can get the holders, so that when they get to their end, they have top loaders they can use, like crazy stuff like that. Like so much to the point where I had to go, this is completely segue, but I had to go find Ultra Pro from a guy out East Coast so I could send stuff off to PSA. Like that, it's that kind of crazy banana stuff that's happening right now. I should say just be patient with them, cut them some slack. They are trying their best. They are being very transparent, but we'll get through it.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I'm not too worried about it from that perspective, but I do want to make sure we make mention of it because if we're talking about that service to bring information in, the processing time is also impacted. So it's not just shipping out; it's also the processing time in. So if you get like an auction brought in, there may be a delay in processing as well. So under normal circumstances, it might still be a great service. Under normal circumstances, it's a fantastic potential service. Right now, it might merely be a good service because you're also going to have a little bit of delay on the processing end as well.
Yeah, they're a victim of their own success. Let's just be quite frank about it. They're a victim of their own success. They're very popular. They're processing more cards than they've ever processed. I've got stuff that's sitting there that I've sent to them probably in January, February that I'm still waiting to get listed, but I'm being patient. I don't need those cards to be listed right now. They're kind of hanging on me, but eventually I'll get through the backlog.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So
I'm gonna and that's plugs.
Yeah, it's like no, but he claims that he's done with his plugs until we mention other previous guests. So it's like Carvin Chung. I'm just going to randomly name names.
Barry Ma has not been on yet, but Barry needs to come on. Barry is a very good guy. He works at COMC. He works really hard. Good buddy of mine. He's a beauty in the hockey lingo. Who else can be named? There's so many people in the hobby. You can Brian Gray.
But the key is I would just basically, because he said until he mentions another previous guests. So it's like I like the idea of just
episode 21 again.
He's up to like episode 40 something.
I think who was on episode 20 and 21? I can't remember.
I never heard of him. I think some nobody. No name.
No, I think there's a big shot on that episode 2021.
It was already mentioned on After Hours. We're not giving you an extra plug. You're already getting airtime right now. You're not getting additional plugs on top of
I'm
it.
getting my 10 minutes of fame.
Exactly. You don't get to plug yourself while you're in the middle of it.
Oh, come on. It's a first for everything.
Yeah, so here you go. Yep. Exactly. Now you know what COMC's going through. They can't handle the volume, Jeremy. But yeah, Paul C makes a good point though. Logistic nightmare. That's why I don't give him too much flack for it, because just imagine a warehouse. Now imagine a warehouse where you're trying to use social distancing and not everything is connected to each other. So if I'm ordering, I use my Medano stuff. Okay, I'm going to order a 1995 Medano card. Maybe that's over there. And I'm ordering a 2005 Medano card. Maybe that's over there in the top shelf. Maybe this other thing's over here in this box. They can find it all, but at the same time, like, okay, while you're doing that, nobody else can be in that row or that shelf theoretically if they're going to follow the rules. So it's like, well, it's going to take a while.
Like system of arrows.
What's that?
Their complex system of arrows would be like that. You know those games where they have the spinning dial and the arrow goes. Okay, you're going this way. You're going to go this way. It's like it's just complicated.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, I'm just being legit. Like, I'm being realistic about this. I am going to. I give them a little bit of a break because I can imagine having worked in warehouse environments or in the back room of like things like that. And imagine if I was forced to have to maintain social distancing from other people that are trying to do the same job at the same time. We'd all be sitting there like we would need a traffic cop to even have a shot and be like, okay, you stop and then you go do what you need to do. And then as soon as you're done, get over here and then you can go. And it would just be a nightmare.
It's gotta be a logistical nightmare. I would not be the one managing it. I mean, they're getting more than enough heat for it to begin with everywhere. They're getting it from everyone right now because everyone wants their stuff because they're sitting at home. They got nowhere to go. And they want their cards, which is very much a first world problem. But anyways, I won't go into that. But they'll get through it.
Yeah, no, that's fair. But like I said, we don't want to just paint the good without understanding that there are challenges. And there can be good reason for the challenges, but we got to be fair and give the good. And everybody has their own challenges as well. All the platforms are going to have their own, because even eBay and stuff, eBay isn't the one shipping it to us. Well, they are if you use the global shipping program, but if you Pitney Bowes. But at the same time, it's like that is painfully slow. Yes, it's tracked the whole way, but my God, it's like weeks and weeks and weeks. We received it. We're processing it. Now we've shipped it out. Okay, it's on its way. It's almost on its way. It's basically there.
It's not any different than, okay, to put it in real terms, like everything is slow right now. I ordered an ergonomic office chair. It's going to take me 3 weeks to get it, and I know it's in 2 or 3 hours from me. I know it's the warehouse, 2 or 3 hours from me. It'll take 2 to 3 weeks to get to me, but it's fine. But I think we're also a victim of the fact that people are not distracted by enough things to all they're looking at is the same thing over and over. I want my card. I want my card. I want my card. But imagine if they were flying on trips and worrying about mortgages, so people actually aren't paying their mortgages yet. They probably wouldn't be so hung up on these small little cards that are taking a little bit of time. Now, the flip side, though, is the people that are probably feeling the most pain are the guys that are flippers. So we're approaching from an angle of a hobbyist, and I was talking purely from a hobbyist, right? But if I'm looking at this as I'm a business person and I'm flipping cards, cards are going up and down by 30-second increments, like the stock market. So if Acuna has a wicked night and I've got my shipment stuck, and it's going to take 9 weeks for my shipment to get processed, and then by week 8 he gets injured, and all the money I just put into that card and I'm waiting for it to get listed, I can see the anger and animosity from that point of view. But I think that if you look at the grand scheme of things, we have a big, heavy segue of collector versus flippers. It's kind of like more flippers and less hobbyists right now. And I think we just have to realize that, people are thinking they can make a quick buck, and that's where they're taking their angst out on, right? Until that field gets leveled a little bit, we won't see the true meaning of all the things they're working on, right? And I do get it. If you've got cards that are worth several $1,000s and you want to list it and you're stuck, or you can't get the card and you're trying to flip it to someone locally, I can see people getting upset about that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so this is a good segue because we've talked about it from the collector's perspective. We've talked about some of the options and features that a collector could employ. But now you've brought it up, and that's perfect because now I want to get into the flipping portion of it a little bit. Because this is the part I have a little bit of experience of it, but only like a smidge. You've got a lot more comfort level with it. So from the flipping perspective, there's a couple of ways you could do this. But I guess one of the simplest ones, so the one that I employed recently was very simple, is I found a card there that I thought was underpriced relative to the market, or I thought they could potentially have some movement. I bought it on COMC just straight up. It was sitting in my holdings. I didn't put it up for sale immediately because I sat back and I thought. So the example I'll use is I bought a Lamar Jackson from Phoenix. It's not a high-end card. It's not a low-end card. It's kind of a mid-range card. But I bought it for about $40. And I said, okay, because we were in the offseason and everything. So I said, you know what? This seems like a reasonable price to me. And then I sold it, and I sold it for about $65, $70 within a couple of weeks. I put it up a little bit later, and then boom, sold for about $65. Now, you could get more for that card now. So if you had held it a little bit longer, you could certainly do well. But I made about $25 within about 30 seconds worth of work. It can be as simple as that. Obviously, some people do it even faster. They buy it and then immediately relist it at a higher price, waiting for the market to catch up. You obviously have different ways you employ it, but like, which way do you think? Have you seen more, or which way do you kind of employ more? Do you buy stuff, hold it for a little bit, and then put it up, or does it go up right away after? If you're going to do flipping,
depends on what it is. It really depends on what it is. 9 times out of 10, I'm lazy and I have I forget what I have, so it's better if I just buy it and relist it right away. But there's some cards that I'm like, well, maybe I'll just hold on to it because let's pretend there's 300 copies of a card. I'm like, do I really want to put my 301st copy up there right now? I'll just hold it for a bit. Maybe in the 2-3 years when the inventory diminishes, I'll put it back up.
Yeah, and the thing is, though, while you're holding it, there's no fee being incurred. It can just sit there. Now, the fee isn't like gigantic because I think it's only like a cent a card or something like that for the card. Yeah, so it's not that crazy. It's in the grand scheme of things. But you've got like, how many cards do you have approximately right now up on COMC?
I want to say almost 40,000.
Yeah, like I know it's an enormous number. That's part of the reason I haven't touched on it until just now for everybody here. But Ameet has a lot of cards on COMC.
38,396.
Yeah, so it's like so he would understand like what it does. But when it's not sitting on there with a price on it, active for sale, it costs you nothing. It can just kind of sit on storage for a long period of time until you're ready to do something with it, basically. Either ship it to yourself or put it up. So you have both of those choices. Yep. So let me just put a comment here by Josh. So as a buyer, he enjoys the race to the bottom. Absolutely. And Josh, as a buyer, if the sellers are competing with each other and the price is, and somebody's undercutting and somebody undercuts the undercut, that's only a win for you as a buyer. As a buyer, that's
it's fine. It's capitalism at its finest, right?
Absolutely. Well, because and that kind of leads into, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. I'll finish off on the flipping piece. But just in general terms, though, anytime that there is something that is high volume, the opportunity for a race to the bottom goes there. Because if there's no real scarcity, well, if I don't sell this, the price could drop way more by the time people get around to me. Because if my price is like the 87th lowest, the 86th below me will probably sell first. And I'm sitting there waiting, and the price might not be where I want it to be by the time it reaches me.
Well, people are looking at it from, you're paying, let's say you pay $100 to submit your items, right? And you have $300 worth of cards and 4 cards. So of the 300 items you have 296 cards that are worthless. Mm-hmm. You don't care what you get for those cards. You're like, okay, I'm going to just get rid of these 296. But I know these 4 cards, I can get $300 to $600 for it. So like, okay, I'm going to muck those high and get rid of this garbage. There's that. Then there's the EPAC craziness, where these EPAC guys are looking for the achievements, and they don't care about the other cards. They're just trying to get rid of it for whatever they can get rid of it for. That's also the race to the bottom. And also the volume of inventory that for some products, there's just not enough buyers to Brian Gray brought this up in a point on Sports Card Live, and I didn't mean that as a shameless plug.
I've never heard of that show. I have no idea what you're talking about.
He did mention there isn't enough people out in the market to absorb that quantity of product, right? And you can see this right now on COMC. You go to some 90s junk wax era. There's Zygmunt Palffy. I'm pretty sure there's several thousands of Zygmunt Palffy rookies in COMC, and there's just not 4,000 people buying his rookies, right? Yeah. So there's a bit of that. Now you won't see that with basketball too much. You won't see that with football too much because there are people buying it, right? There are enough that are trying to get enough product to get out there. But hockey, I've noticed it for sure. All that's to say is you just need the right people to buy it, but there's people that just want to get rid of the dead weight and then keep the good weight.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's just, like I said, it's another platform. It's just another way for you to see what's going on because it shows you if something is available in abundance, it's going to sit there until you find the buyer who's like, okay, fine, I'll take a shot at this, or I'll make an offer. You know, it might not be at the price you asked for. It might be an offer, depending on what it is. But it the Ziggy Palfy example is a good one because like there was almost unlimited production. It's just so much production that it's like, well, what are you going to do? You can't expect that much from it just because of how much it was. And Zygmunt Palfy isn't somebody that people are thinking about today. Not very much.
I'm actually going to look that up right now because now I need to know the answer.
There you go. All right. So while he's looking that up, I'm going to kind of set up the next piece because what I wanted to kind of get to. So I wanted to talk about COMC a little bit because that is right in Ameet's wheelhouse, and we wanted to kind of get an understanding of it. But now we're going to talk about cards again in general terms, because this is something we've already touched on a couple of different times in different videos I've done in Sports Card Live, in different avenues that I've done as well, with talking to other collectors and other hobbyists and other quote unquote investors and folks like that. The problem with a lot of these cards, you know, I'll use Topps flagship baseball as an example, is that again, whenever you're going with something that's unlimited or that doesn't have a clearly defined limit, we don't know what it is. You know, the manufacturer's not telling us, but there's a lot. We know that because we go look at the population reports of some of the graded cards. We know there's a lot. We know there is. But because of that, we end up with a situation where regardless of whatever happens, you can have a high graded version of this card, but so do so many other people. So then you get down to, and we talked about this a little bit, Ameet, but let me kind of bring this into, I know baseball is not really your avenue, but let's still talk about it a little bit because baseball is great for prospecting. We know that. There's a lot of prospecting, Bowman Chrome and all that different stuff. There's a lot of possibilities of it. But even in your experience with it, is there something you look for? Is it a player in general, or is it like or you're just trying to like disperse your dollars as much as possible to try to be like, okay, look, if we put enough lottery tickets out there, maybe one of them will cash.
For me, it is part diversification, but I only go into the areas where I enjoy it. If I don't know baseball, I probably wouldn't do baseball. I wouldn't do hockey unless I have to love it enough to want to spend the effort to do it. So that's one thing. So baseball, I enjoy the sport. Do I know it really well? No. But I do rely on news and information that people tell me. So I have a couple of very good friends that's sorry, just so you know, Zygmunt Palfy has 2,588 copies of his rookie card. Anyway, so I rely on some people telling me, like, you should try this guy, you should try that guy. I have a very good friend, a friend of mine who sets up with me at the expo. His name is Kent. He and I talk a lot about this stuff, and he gives me some tidbits and pointers on what I should look at. But it is part diversification and also part fun. I want to see what happens. Like, I would love to see what if I can make the right decision and say, you know, I picked up this guy and it was the right call. To give you a real life example, I was thinking, and I told Kent this a while ago. I had a feeling about Mookie Betts.
Sure.
I'm going to go buy a couple of Mookie Betts graded cards. And I'm like, and I didn't go day one or day. I think I told you as well, Carlos. I didn't buy it on day one. Then I think day three, I'm like, I'm going to go buy it. The minute I went to go buy it, they went from whatever number it was to $700. I'm like, what's going on here? Yeah. Go to the next one. Boom. So I immediately type in Mookie Betts. Sure enough, Gary V had talked on Twitter. He picked up Mookie Betts. So all the cards on COMC went crazy. So that's the other thing you'll notice about COMC is you want to know what people are doing and buying like crazy. Go look at the recently added and click on graded, and you'll see what people are pulling up on graded. You'll actually see what's hot. You'll see what people are looking for, what's coming in. But yeah, there's a lot of people prospecting baseball on COMC. A lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I'll say, like, with what you said there's two good points here. One of them is, and this is something that takes experience, it takes time, it takes practice, and it's something that occasionally, though, even a veteran hobbyist or someone who's been around the block a couple of times will still need reminders from time to time. Sometimes it's like, you know what? Trust your gut. Yeah. If you have this idea in your head, don't wait until day 3. Learn the lesson from what Ameet did here is that he had a good idea, that there was nothing wrong with the idea. It's just by the time, you're going, I'll do it tomorrow. In this hobby, you don't procrastinate. In this hobby, you got to be like on it. If you already have the notion in your head, like if you're brand new, you do want to be a little more deliberate. You don't want to just run the first instinct you have because it might not be the right instinct. But once you develop your instincts a little bit and go like, you know what? I have a feeling about this. And if you trust your gut over time, then do what your gut is telling you to do and just proceed. Because you're going to have because you're not going to want necessarily to be sitting back. Because once people pick up on it, they immediately run. It's a mad dash to be like, adjust the prices, do whatever, buy in, then repost.
The one thing you'll notice on COMC is, so on eBay, there's more volume. So the prices will get inflated, but there's not as high a volume on COMC. So the prices are going to go even higher than retail in some cases. Like if Mookie Betts was 500 US average on eBay, it's going to be 800 to 900 to 1,000 on COMC. So don't even think about going back to COMC to buy that car because those cars are priced higher than they are in retail. So if you're going to miss, you're going to miss huge. So you better pick it up.
Now I agree with that, but there is an upside to that though, because this is good old fashioned arbitrage, right? You're looking at two different markets. So eBay is one market and COMC is another market. Sometimes there's a delayed reaction. Sometimes COMC will act first, and sometimes eBay will act first, because I've seen both. I've seen ones where eBay, the buy it nows, are actually lower than what COMC already has reacted to. And sometimes I've seen vice versa, because I've gone in and bought some baseball cards myself in the baseball realm, where like the latest eBay auctions are already going with double what some of the COMC cards are going for. So I went to the COMC and I hit the buy it now, and now it's mine. There's a little.
So I have actually, well, I check eBay and COMC, and I check all the different places I go look for cards. If I'm buying a personal collection item, I'm checking where's the pricing kind of I'm happy with, and I'll buy it based on what platform it makes sense to me. We also kind of have to have Twitter up, Instagram, eBay, COMC, forum. You got to be paying attention to probably, I think I pay attention to at least 15 different places of where I'm getting my sports content from before I'm making decisions on COMC. So you have to really do your research, but do it fast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think maybe the takeaway from that is simply that, like, well, there's no shortcuts. If you're going to do it properly and you're not just guessing, you can guess, you might get right, but then you're doing the lottery ticket route. You're really like, look, I just bought a scratch ticket. I'm just going to give this a go and see if it works out. But if your intention is to try to do it with some manner of control, to actually think through the process a little bit, there's usually a lot of work to be done. But you do have to be, once you do make up your mind and you make a decision, go. It's just,
and like, don't get me wrong, for all the 10,000 people who are saying they're doing really, really well, there are an equal number of people who bought Josh Ho-Sang Young Guns and are now kicking themselves for holding on to Josh Ho-Sang Young Guns. Like, you also have to believe not believe everything people say to you. Like, everyone has to show you proof that they're actually doing X, Y, or Z. Like, don't believe a lie enough to make someone believe that what they're doing is actually the truth. You'll do your own research, figure it out, and there's more than enough content on YouTube. There's actually so many avenues and places to learn about how to do this right. But you have to trust your gut, but you also have to know what you're doing, right? Like it's no different than going in the stock market and say, I'm going to make an option call. I have no idea what an option call is, but I'm just going to do it, realizing you're hooped if you do the wrong move, right? So this is no different. Do your homework, understand your market, and also play it safe. 100% play it safe until you know enough to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And that kind of plays into what we were talking about a little bit earlier, is that if you haven't done that research at all, then you're basically playing with a hand grenade and then thinking like, oh, I know what I'm doing. I'm just going to pull this pin. And it's like, no, you don't know what you're doing. You shouldn't have pulled that pin. I would throw that away as soon as I can if I were you. Now, Jeremy brings up an interesting thing here, and it's a fair comment. It's a good one. I'm finding it harder to organize and make sense of all the Facebook groups I'm in, which to really pay attention to. Now, this is a good general thought, because what you mentioned already a minute ago, all these places you're looking, there's such a right now, because the hobby's booming. You have this huge, massive expansion of Instagram. You have this massive expansion of YouTube. You have this massive expansion of Facebook groups. You got Facebook groups for specific topics. Super collectors, certain sports, certain this. Grading Facebook groups. There's so much, and it's all this noise. It's kind of hard to understand, like, where do you want to go? Because it used to be like forums and like a handful of other things, but now it's like, it's not just that. It's all the social media, and it's this. You got to keep an eye on what Gary Vee's doing and all this stuff.
But it's also why you have to know. Okay, so when I say I have these things open, I actually only trust certain people and sources, or I've known a lot of people who in the hobby could have been in it for a while. I think I'm fairly confident I know where the BS lies, right? I'm very careful to believe what I believe, but also I follow people I trust and I talk to them. I'll call up Jeremy and we'll talk about X or Y or Z, or I'll talk to Kent, my buddy Kent, about X, Y, or Z. I'm not afraid to talk to someone and say, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? But it's talking to people, but you also don't follow it blindly. That's the other problem I have with it. A lot of people will follow advice blindly, right? They're like, oh, I'm just going to go buy 14 Acuna PSA 10 bat down, then that's it. I'm not going to buy anything else. You know, the same guys buying 1,300 Greg Jeffries. See what I did there?
The 88 Donruss Greg Jeffries is the 52 Topps Mantle of the 1980s. The 52 Topps Mantle of the 1980s. Minus the fact that it's printed in the billions. But aside from that, it's the Mickey Mantle of the 1980s.
Sorry, one last comment, though, Carlos, is there's some common people in all the different places I go see. Mm-hmm. So they're speaking in different forms, but at least it's the same thread of people. Those people I trust. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just had that.
Fine. Like I said, we'll have more time to discuss the 88 Donruss Greg Jeffries and its cultural significance in the hobby. It's like the Mona Lisa of sports cards.
I almost bought one today, dude. Just for you. I almost bought one.
And you should.
It was 75 cents, but I don't know if that was 75 cents well spent.
I can't think of a better use than 75 cents myself. I can't.
I don't know. What's that in US dollars to Canadian? Hold on.
While you're doing that, let me grab some comments here. But I do want to follow up on a thing you said as well. Give me a second here. So let's just get a couple of these comments. So Joe here says, some things I research profusely, other things I use instinct and even act impulsively. It depends on a lot of things, and I don't always get it right, which is fair. That's normal. That's definitely kind of the path that a lot of folks are going to follow. Yeah, you have to try to find that balance, because sometimes you don't have time to research profusely. You'd love to, but sometimes there is an opportunity, and you have to be willing to. Again, this is where experience will help you, because it's like, look, if I trust my gut and instinct over time, sometimes I don't know why my gut is telling me this is a good idea, but if I trust my gut because it has led me the right way enough times,
yep,
then I'm a lot more comfortable making this move, and then it'll become clear later. This is the feeling I had. This is why I was sensing that this was the way to go.
I agree, and you also have to keep in mind that this is dollar. Like when people are buying and selling these cards, this is dollars and cents. So this is after tax dollars you're spending. Okay,
yeah, exactly.
So after tax dollars, and then all the other stuff to deal with on top of that. So you have to be very careful and frugal of how you spend your dollars.
Exactly. So let's do. All right, here we go. Are you ready for another shameless plug that isn't directly from Jeremy?
Episode 20.
Hold on, we got it. Here you go. Shamelessness. He's now even getting other people to do shameless plugs for him. It's fantastic. All right, so let me get a comment here from Pulsey. So flashbacks to buying 91-92 Solani rookies for 50 cents when he had his first 2 weeks in the NHL, selling for $20 each the following March, which is a great return, Paul. You did well. You did well. I don't know how much they go for now, but it can't be more than a couple of dollars.
Well, why don't I tell you?
Yep. So let's see here. Hold on. So here. A good point of following blind. I feel like some of the market is like a cat chasing a laser pointer. Not wrong. I think that's felt. Here you go. Felt like Rockefeller on that one. Not bad. Not bad. I think that's fair. Now, I wanted to kind of quickly ask you a question based on what you said a second ago, though, because this is one of the things. So like I said, you enjoy the prospecting. There's a little bit of gut, a little bit of intuition involved in it, and a little bit of those different things. But here's the thing. Let me ask you this question, because I know you've played around and dabbled in this. So if I gave you a choice and you're going to do a little bit of prospecting, are you going to lean towards the high grade flagship, or are you going to look a little bit at some of those a little bit more limited variations, maybe like a bat down, or maybe like a parallel or some, or are you just trying to like stack up volume? Are you looking at the volume model versus like, I'd like something a little bit rarer that maybe has a shot of sustaining if it turns out I'm right?
I'm looking at the ROI on the scenario personally.
Yeah.
So if I buy, I can't remember, like I'm not a baseball expert. I just know the bat down, Acuna is the most expensive one, or should be the flagship most expensive one. But I can afford it. So I'm going to go for something else that I think is probably the normal bat variation, the blue jersey bat variation, which is a little bit cheaper. And I said, okay, well, I'll buy 2 or 3 of those instead of one of these, because I can diversify here, and I'll hold that, see if that goes up. So it's the answer. I don't really have a straight answer for what you're asking me. It depends on the card. So if the flagship card is out of my reach, for example, a Trout, I can't afford a Trout. I'm not even looking at Trout. Trout is not something that's on my radar, right? I'm looking at if Acuna is affordable. I can look at Soto, look at Tatis. Well, not so much. But there's certain guys I will look at for affordability, and I say, okay, well, if I can make a quick flip here, and this guy will go up, I'll try this instead, right? So it's not so much volume; it's just an ROI factor and the affordability factor.
Yeah, no, that's fair. The only reason I'm asking the question is because right now we've got like two prevailing theories. Right now, the market, a lot of folks keep trying to build up that volume. They're really excited about those high grade like flagship cards. But I keep going back to like, guys, you don't know how many of there are. And a lot of these are grading high in high percentages. Like in terms of the amount of submissions, you're getting a lot of 9s and 10s. So it's not like there's a condition rarity. It's very difficult to try and feel like there's going to be any sustaining, because if you do get some kind of a market retraction, those cards are going to be there. And suddenly those people that suddenly want to get rid of this card and take their profit, because there's so many already there, it suddenly floods the market automatically. Whereas if you've got a card that has a little bit of limit to it, well, maybe there'll be some player collectors there that will try to get a bargain, but they'll still give you a better return on your per dollar versus what happened with that flagship where they're like, no, man, I already got 2 or 3. I'm not interested. Move on to the next person. So the demand suddenly collapses, but the supply is still humongous.
You're not wrong. There's a metric ton of those graded cards out there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I check my PSA app all the time when I'm looking at the card. And I remember it was Mitch Marner, Young Gun PSA 10. At one point, I was like, there's 1,000 of these out there. 1,000, right? So you have to wonder how some of the markets, some of the data points are sustained, or sorry, not data points, how the cards are able to sell for X, Y when there's so many available. Like, for example, if you want to use Zygmunt Palffy, there's 2,588 Zygmunt Palffy rookies in COMC. But I'm pretty sure some of those Acuna graded cards, there's probably more than 2,500 of those cards graded. So, it's not like a rocket science to figure out how much have been graded, right?
Yeah, there are. And the thing is, that's completely fair. The problem with the Ziggy Palffy is that there might be more of the Acunas, but right now there might be 3 people in the entire planet who want a Ziggy Palffy rookie that don't already have one.
Well, that's his mom, his dad, and his sister. I'm assuming he has a sister.
And they already have 3 each, so they're probably good. So it might be, maybe they got some cousins or something. That's about all that's left. So let me grab a couple of these. So I like that the chat's going. I like it. So we got Josh. So if you have a narrow collection focus, it's easier to understand the market. I think that's fair, because then you can't monitor everything. That's not possible. That's very valid. And then Joe is replying to that. Expanding interests, which is fair. It's hard sometimes to stay a little bit focused. So that's fair. Let me go down here. Here we go. So find a project that's down to one of the last 2 cards. Do the, hey, let's check this out. That's dangerous.
Yeah.
I like this comment. Is Trout a fish? He might as well be. He's an above average baseball player, if that helps.
Oh, let's not go there. I don't want to argue about live TV.
He's probably, listen, I'm willing to concede to Ameet right now, on the record for everybody, he's at least the 2nd best baseball player with a fish last name. Tim Salmon, I don't know. Maybe. I might like Tim Salmon a little more.
Listen, I'm not going to expose your Pujols fantasy today, so we're not going to go there. I don't want to argue with you. I argue enough on the phone. That's enough.
Those are called stats, Ameet. Those are called stats. Anyway. All right. They drafted name for Halibut. Nice. Nice. There you go. More like 3 people in the world want a Palffy rookie. -3. Yeah. That's probably about right.
Carlos, if you want to play the role of spoiler and want to be an influencer, our job is to promote Zygmunt Palffy so other people buy it, so I can actually get rid of the 6 that I own.
You have 6?
That's it.
That's like 6 too many.
Oh, I know.
Unless you have a set. Like, I don't understand why you have 1.
I don't know. I don't even know why I have 1. Or I don't even know why I have half of 1. Anyway.
Do you at least have the French one?
Dude, I don't even know if it's English, French, or Spanish.
Well, if you have a Spanish one, that might be good.
You never know. Maybe it's the uber rare 1-of-1 version.
Yeah, if you can get Senor Palffy, then that one might be worth something. I would get that one graded if I were you. You got a shot. If you want to be an influencer, let's get on the Senor Palffy rookie card. That'll be the one. Yeah. So real quick, I'll just make a reference to kind of the tongue-in-cheek thing. One of my shticks is that I'm a well-avowed Trout hater. But part of the reason I get away with it is because I do say it a little bit tongue-in-cheek. I can accept that he's a good player, but I don't know if I can accept that he is the hobby love he gets is out of proportion right now with the talent that I'm comfortable saying he has currently. So it's one of those things where he's right now been put into that iconic status where I don't know if he's earned it yet. So that's why I'm kind of curious about it. But he's hardly the only one. And he's far from the most egregious example. There are a lot of rookies that have gotten elevated to that level that are probably a lot worse. Way worse.
I'm sure Tebow got more love than Trout at one point.
Well, yeah, but you're also looking at football market where like some of his high-end rookies would have been like crazy at the absolute peak of Tebow mania, and he produced nothing in the pros to warrant it. At least I will give this: Trout is 10 years in. He does have some kind of a track record assembling. It hasn't amounted to anything, but he's definitely accumulating statistics. So he's doing that. So that's working out.
Hey, just so everyone's aware, the whole premise of this whole conversation, which I accidentally fell into, was the whole Pujols versus Trout conversation. So if anybody in the comments wants to talk about Pujols, do so in a positive light only, or we'll never get through the rest of this interview.
There's nothing negative you can say about Pujols. His career is just about over.
I'm not saying anything negative. I went down a tributary of thought, which I regret. That's all I'm saying.
You should have that should be hardly your least regret. Your first regret should be you have Ziggy Palfy rookies.
No, dude, I've got other regrets. I don't even want to get in.
Nice. All right, so let's see here.
I have my card.
There you go. He's got his card. It's interesting to think about the demographics. So Joe has this comment. It's interesting to think about the demographics of collectors. For some, it's just a matter of what's available at the time the urge strikes to purchase a card. I think that's less common now. It's interesting. A matter of what's available at the time the urge strikes to purchase a card. I still think there's an impulsiveness to collecting because to a certain degree, like collecting is an impulse. So I don't know if we ever like get fully out of that because there's got to be there.
All right.
Yeah, like if you have a focus in it, like the argument, the debate, like that whole debate I have is great fun for me. I bring up Pujols because it's enjoyable and because I can compare stats. But guess what? It's subjective. Like if you genuinely like the guy, whatever player you like, you can come up with stats that will back it up. Like you can get really creative. You can come up with a lot of different things. But when it comes to buying a player or buying a player's cards, it's almost 100% impulse. Like you have to want it. You have to have there has to, unless you're strictly looking at some data and you're trying to completely take the passion out of it, which you can try, and some people do it more successfully than others. Yeah. There's almost always an impulse to it. Does that make sense? You know what I mean?
Dude, that's my wife was texting me. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying, like, regardless, if you try to focus on strictly analytics, you can try to a certain degree and you may succeed, but there's almost always going to be an impulsiveness to it. Unless you can somehow strip it completely out and go straight data.
It's you can mention. Okay, so the hobby, you think of the word, it's a hobby, right? So there naturally is a segue to impulse, right? Mm-hmm. When you enjoy something, you're going to be impulsive. Like when people go out barbecuing, they buy the egg. It's $2,000 piece of artwork that people love, and they say it makes the best steak that they've ever had. They're a hobbyist barbecue, but they went and made impulse purchase, and they probably can't afford that $2,000 egg. But you do it anyway, and all of us have had that. Like I've done so many impulsive purchases; it's beyond stupidity, and I'm embarrassed to admit some of the things I have bought. Like Donna's preferred tins. I actually at the expo sat down at my booth and I cracked probably 40 of these tins, 40 of these tins with my buddy, trying to find this stupid Marion Hossa preferred silver card, which was worth probably $3.18.
No, were you talking about when it was still close to its peak, or when it had fallen off quite a bit?
Well, it had fallen off so far. Like it was.
Yeah. I think it was $100 card at one point, something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. You'd have to pay someone $3 to take it off your hands at this point, I think.
Yeah, and the sad part is that Hossa was actually a really good player.
Well, he took out Brian Berard's eye, and I've hated him ever since. So that's a different story.
Nah, it's a small thing, but 3 Stanley Cups towards the end of his career, though, help along with the stats and everything, so it worked out for him. So let me just go here.
He got paid too.
What's that?
He got paid.
Yeah, that's true. So here. So this was Paul, and he did have this comment. It was based on that video where I was talking about like players that are like towards the end of the Hall of Fame. So I used Pujols, but I also mentioned like Ichiro's in this category too, because technically he's retired and he was in the same class. So you can actually still get a lot of Ichiro as well. Go ahead.
My favorite thing about Ichiro isn't his playing career; it's his comment about playing in Cleveland. So if you ever get a chance, go on YouTube and look for the famous interview where he says all the places he loves to play and the places he hates to play. and listen to his comment about Cleveland. And I play that clip, and it makes me smile every time.
Was it in English or was it translated from Japanese?
Translated, but basically he hated Cleveland. It's like, no,
Take a number.
yeah.
Yeah, there are people that live in Cleveland that hate Cleveland. Here you go, Josh. Josh has it right. Josh knows. See that one? So, and I will say, at least Joe Carter has the distinction of having been directly involved in the end of 2 consecutive World Series. So that's a kind of a cool trivia note for Joe. I wish he had gotten a couple of more Hall of Fame votes. I don't think he was a Hall of Famer, but I think he was a great player in his time.
He's a nice guy.
Yeah. It's one of those things. It was fun, and he was a good player for that Toronto team. He was the guy they needed. He was that kind of guy that they required to do well.
Yeah, Winfield the year after, right?
What's that?
Winfield came the year after?
Winfield was 92. Winfield was 92. And but Carter got there in the deal they did in 91. So it was him and Alomar who came over, and then all of a sudden they had a super team for 2 years. It was very impressive. It was a great little run there. So here we go. Here you go. Hossa, 29.74 on COMC. Ameet.
What? It went up in value.
You know what to do, Ameet.
Oh man, I gotta go look at that and flip it.
Do it. Here we go. So Joe's got this. I guess I have more people explain to me why I should sell them a card for cheaper due to comps, and fewer seem to just buy the card. Well, I think that's your like your lazy negotiating 101.
I love that one. I've heard them all.
Yeah,
I've heard.
Go ahead.
You can get it cheaper on eBay. Well, okay, go ahead and get it, and tell me how much it costs for shipping and duties when it comes across the border.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I have a friend that is in the hobby that loves to up the price whenever he hears someone make that comment. So if the card is $20 and someone says I can get it cheaper on COMC, the card in the display case is now $30.
Yeah, but yeah. I think sometimes. So Joe, to your point, that's very true. But at the same time, I always think when it comes to the art of negotiation, a lot of people forget that it is a two-sided street. If you're the seller, you can try selling it for any price you want. You can also be ridiculously unrealistic on your side of it. You know, the buyer might be perfectly reasonable. It can happen both ways. They can be like, look, man, it's not worth that. Forget about comps, forget about everything else. It's like there's nothing to justify what you're trying to get for this card. And you can hold firm to that. But at the same time, you're always going to have the tire kickers and the people who are going to try to come up with every excuse in creation, you know, based on the weather, based on the direction of the wind, and the comps related therein. Somehow it's worth less than what every other sale around you says it is worth.
You know what's interesting is you actually, because I work in advertising and I work in a family businessman. Basically, you look at body language when people come to buy cards, you can tell right away who's fishing and who really wants to buy the card. So and also we've been doing this long enough so you know like who to waste your time with and who not to waste your time with. So it's like you have to be careful there too, because you can get strung along string if you're going down the wrong road.
Yeah, well, that's why I said our mutual friends tactic. I don't really have a moral opposition to it because sometimes it's a good way to just streamline this thing. Like, do you want it or not? Because the
audacity to do it.
Maybe the problem is that I'm predisposed. Like, to me, there's no audacity there. To me, that's standard operating procedure. That's standard in my house. Sorry, we don't have the kind of patience to deal with that. Yeah, that's fair. But so one more thing I'll cover in relation to that. So I think that was a really good discussion as pertains to the whole kind of psychology of it. Oh, and one more thing I'll throw in here that was a fair point, which kind of falls into what we were talking about a couple minutes ago here. Zion Williams has played 24 games. And just look at all the price action his card have had. Like in the relatively short period of time, we can argue about other players. And like I said, it becomes fun. It's a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek thing. I enjoy it. But it's really hard to argue for players that have no resume, nothing to speak of, no accomplishments, nothing we can say other than people are hoping they could be this thing. And they're already priced at a level commiserate to a Hall of Famer or commiserate to a multiple-time All-Star or somebody who at least has a resume to speak of.
Yeah, I mean, Zion Williamson, I do think he is a very good player, and he just based on what I've seen, he might be worth the money that people are paying for some of these cards, but they're also, what's it? I can't remember who you had on your show, Carlos. Cardboard Chronicles.
Josh.
Yeah, he's like it's not out of 99. There's umpteen versions of this card and many different parallels and different products. They have way more rookie cards than some of the true Hall of Famers. Back in the day, right? So
Chronicles was the product where they just made a bunch of different versions.
Yeah.
So the thing is, since we don't know the print runs, right? None of them are numbered. So we've got like 20 or 25 different versions of the Zion Williamson. They're all technically rookie cards. And this was kind of a way of Panini skirting around the idea of printing so many. They just made different designs, slapped the rookie logo on them. And well, they're 20 different rookies. They're not all the same rookie. But the problem is you gave me 20 rookies in one product. 20 different distinct rookies that just have a different design. So technically they're not the same, but they came out of the same product.
But here's the other flip side to that. So, okay, so they're saying that in basketball. And basketball may have, umpteen million versions of rookie cards. But, okay, let's look at Topps. You got Topps update. Then you got the parallels. And then there's the holiday mega box version. Then there's the mega holiday version. So, those aren't numbered either, but they all carry the same amount of weight, and they seem to be doing all right. And this has been since 2018. So I'd argue they probably printed the same amount then as they are now.
Well, the same amount or more or less?
More or less, I would say more or less the same, but it's people are still buying them, and the prices are still going up. So there doesn't seem to be any end in sight for that, right?
Okay, well, you know what? You just hit on something interesting. Let me expand on what you just said there, because you just see we're in there, but you just hit on something very interesting. The idea that people are buying them and the prices are going up. That's true. Supply and demand's real. Like I'm not here to deny it. That's true. But my question then becomes this: the problem is I don't know how many people are buying them. And technically, it doesn't matter. If there's 1 million cards and 1 million are sold, it doesn't matter whether 1 million people bought it or one person bought it.
Yes.
But in practical reality, it does matter, because if one person bought 1 million, there might not be another buyer. But we've got 1 million sales. So did we do well or did we do badly? Because when it comes time for the next sale, who's my buyer? And the issue that I have right now is that I don't know. I don't feel comfortable in calling the shot of whether this demand is based on so many new players as much as some new players combined with the greed of some pre-existing players who are like suddenly like, all right, I'll buy 50 because I'm seeing these new entrants. So I'm going to buy a bunch because I'm hoping that there are thousands coming in where maybe there's hundreds coming in. I'm just using numbers to kind of like quantify this. But you get what I'm trying to say?
I do. And there's no regulation for it, right? That's the other thing. So a lot of people say, well, the stock market does that. Well, no, there's a regulated, the Security Commission is there for a reason. You can't have umpteen shares. You have X amount of shares. Those shares are the shares that people are buying. Whereas the card, you do not know the print run. I also don't think it's something that you can get easily from Freedom of Information Act in Canada. I don't think that's something that applies in the States. No one can get that information. There's none of the right for them to find that information. But yeah, there's so many out there. But we won't know until the seeming impending doom of the market correction is going to happen, which hasn't happened. And the fact that it hasn't happened at the most tenuous, strenuous time of COVID and it's still going up, it makes you wonder.
I suppose, but okay. If we use the stock market as an example, the problem I have, I agree with your general premise. I think is reasonable, but the counter that I have is that a market doesn't care necessarily about the external factors that you would think, because a market. Funny enough, for all the sophistication people try to put on the market's stupid. It's actually kind of dumb. It doesn't take a lot.
I agree.
Yeah, all I was going to say is I was just going to use an example of the stock market because it is a regulated market. So in theory, you would think it would be immune to like even a fraction of this, even a fraction. But in reality, no. One of the most famous frauds ever undertaken, Enron. What happened? Did Enron not make any money? No, that wasn't the issue. The issue was they misreported the money they were making to make it look better than it was. Mm-hmm. But people just accepted. But those revenues never actually came in because it was accounting tricks. But people kept buying the shares for years. It wasn't for like a week or a month, or it was over a course of years. And then eventually somebody goes, guys, they didn't actually make the amount of money they said they made. And everybody was like, what? And then suddenly the shares got sold off and the stock tanked. But if they had never like fully discovered the extent of the accounting malpractice they were doing, Enron could be $50,000 a share today and no one would be the wiser, and they could have not made money for the last 20 years. Who would know?
But there are examples of people who are buying stocks of companies that still haven't been profitable.
I agree. But what I'm trying to get at is this company was profitable at one point, was operating regularly. At some point, they changed their accounting practices, and they reported continuous profits, increasing profits. And most investors didn't know enough to be like, they knew enough to read the financial figures, but they were also putting their trust in the accounting agency that was signing off on it. because that's all part of this practice. And this is a more regulated industry. But for a long time, they were able to perpetuate this fraud using accounting principles in a shady way. And it worked for a long time until it didn't. I'm using this as an extreme example. This is in a regulated industry, supposedly with accountants and auditors and folks involved, and it still worked for quite a while because the actual investors didn't care necessarily as long as the stock kept going up, because you could have been an investor multiple times through the whole run-up as that stock kept going up over time. If you had sold off before all these things were discovered, you would have made out like a bandit anyway, regardless of what the outcome was. But while you owned that stock, it wasn't actually making money, but it didn't matter. It was perceived to be making money, and perception was more important than reality.
But that's not that is happening now anyway.
That's the point I'm trying to make, though. What you said a few minutes ago was that these people are buying and this market's going up, and you would think that with the economy and all that, it's like if the buyers decide the economy is irrelevant and they keep buying cards, then it's not going to matter. Whoever is buying these cards has decided the economy is irrelevant.
Yes, but at some point, someone has to get a dollar from somewhere.
Correct, but we don't have a timeline on that. But we know that at the moment, the external is not actually connecting to the. I think people assume that the external would actually connect with it sooner, and it hasn't happened. Turns out the market is pretty insulated to it until eventually it isn't. Until eventually someone tries to sell a card and can't find a buyer, then something happens.
Well, Zygmunt Palthy rookie card. Just going to bring that.
You'll see. We'll find a buyer, Ameet. We'll find a buyer. You only need 6 of them. You just need 6 of those buyers.
The other thing, the angle, though, you have to keep in mind, Carlos, is so I'm of the mind of being a hobbyist first, right? I'm a hobbyist. So these people that are in here spending lots of dollars to go after these big end cards and trying to make these profits, those are the ones have the most to lose in the end, right? Mm-hmm. They have the most to lose. They hang on to it the longest. But the question is, when is that longest period going to end?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the thing is that unfortunately we don't, unless you got your crystal ball fired up. I don't have an exact time for you. 5 p.m. next Thursday. You guys might want to be sold out by 5 p.m. next Thursday. But like we just be guessing. And here's the thing: if you guess enough times, somebody will get it right. But you're guessing. You're just making up dates.
Well, if you tell a lie enough times, you'll become the truth.
Exactly. So let me grab a couple of these comments here. So Joe has, as many smart than I have said, every card needs a home. Well, tell it to the Ziggy Palthy cards, Joe. We got to keep working on those homes here. Here you go. But with so many investors, by when does it need a home? Yeah, the date is the thing. We don't know. What's going to be interesting about these print runs, and we're going to learn sooner or later, we're going to learn how many. That's why I said, like, to me, the amount of buyers is as relevant as the amount of volume being sold. I think that is relevant because only so many people can hoard so many. Because if I'm looking at a collector, they're probably not going to have dozens and dozens of copies of the same card. Some may, but I think that's not the norm. I think most collectors are going to have what they need, and then they're maybe going to flip the rest. But eventually you need a real collector to buy the end card for this whole thing to work. Otherwise, that's when the cycle stops, and then you get a reversal. So we got Briex here, Paul. That's a good reference too. Madoff, housing crisis, county irregularities with the cannabis companies. Yeah, the thing is, weird stuff happens, and that's in a regulated market. In this one, we're unregulated, so we don't even have. We've got data points, but all we know is that someone theoretically bought these cards. They bought these many. This is the sales volume from eBay. We have that data. We don't know if they all paid. We don't have that data yet. It would be wonderful if eBay would make that more readily available, because I think that's relevant too. Just because there was a completed sale on eBay doesn't mean somebody paid for it.
Yeah, 100% again. Also, there is the gray area. Like when you and I go meet at the Tim Hortons and we do a deal, mm-hmm. that isn't recorded, right? Mm-hmm. We don't know what that deal is.
Yeah. And Instagram deals and Facebook deals and anything that isn't inside of a thing that you can pull data from.
100% agree. 100% agree. I mean, all this to say is so one thing I will say is my experience with the hobby and what I'm doing now, I am not waiting for the end of the world to come from that perspective, right? So then the reason I say that is I'm not so focused on that. I do question it, but I'm also not in deep enough to worry about it to the point where I have to diverge all my collections and all that. So my collections are kind of proof of that. I do think though the reason some of these questions are coming around is a lot of people are thinking it and are worried about their diversification of funds into these collections. Those are the ones that have the most to lose, right? So there's noise, maybe not coming from hobbyists themselves, but coming from these investors themselves, right? So there's that. Where is this noise coming from? Right now, a lot of hobbyists are losing out because the wax is unaffordable. Walmart has fanboys lined up waiting to buy all the products. Tops and all these companies selling stuff online. It's just unaffordable to the people who want to enjoy. So the risk factor is here. Let's say the market, argument's sake, the market does correct itself. And let's say the market is 75% investor and 25% hobby. The 25% of hobbyists leave the world because they can't afford it, don't want to do this anymore. And then the 75% of the people, investors, leave, then there is nobody to sell to. So the question is, how far do you alienate the true hobbyist versus the investment portion of it? That's what I worry about too, to make sure there's people still enjoying it enough to want to keep doing it and aren't getting pissed off or upset that people are in here for a quick buck.
Yeah, no, I get it. I think the only thing I do to fight back on that a little bit is that I try to bear in mind this is where history helps you. There's always been people out there for a quick buck. It's not like it just started yesterday. It's not like it started last weekend. It's been going now. Right now, we're getting it amplified because it's in our face, and people are seeing manifestations of it in front of them. People trying to hoard, retail products, grabbing all the blasters and stuff like that. And I get that, but it's not like the idea of hoarding is new. People have been trying to do that for a long time, but right now it's in our face, and maybe we're focused on it a little bit more. But let me quickly grab something here from Josh here. So is owning an entire print run out of 10 good or bad? Well, Josh, the good. Go ahead.
Very good.
It can be. The only thing I would say, Josh, is that under most circumstances, the answer is yes. I tend to agree with Ameet. But if absolutely nobody comes cursing your name because you own all 10 of them, then it's probably bad. As long as there's somebody cursing your name who wants one and you've got all 10, then it's good. Because there's got to be somebody else. But in most cases, there is somebody else. So that's the good news. Having the entire print run is then you kind of control the market. As long as there's somebody else who wants it, then you control the market. You can decide to sell one or two or none.
Unless you have an 11 of 10 show up.
Yeah, exactly. Here you go. That's how I manipulate my piece of the card market. It's a fair call. But yeah, it really comes down to the thing is, even with a low print run, as long as somebody else wants it, then yes, you're good. But the problem is if it turns out you cornered the market and no one else cares. That'd be kind of funny.
From about 2,500 of those Griezmann Talty rookie cards, they still can't sell to anyone.
You can always live the dream, Ameet. There's always another day.
I don't know why I'm picking on him. I don't know. Because I think you can't keep talking about Greg Jeffries, and then now it's stuck in my head.
Don't try to blame this on Greg Jeffries.
He was actually a good ball player, so don't get me wrong.
What's that?
He was an above-average ball player. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah. Well, he did have, I think he had like a 10-year career, didn't he?
Yeah. So
yeah. So he was fine.
He actually has the last laugh. He's getting a pension somewhere.
Yeah. But that was the whole thing. Like the reason the Greg Jeffries thing is funny is not because he didn't play. He played long enough where he was good enough at his job to keep the job for for at least a decade. That's not bad. You can't complain about that. But he never became the superstar they thought he was going to become when he became the poster child of the whole thing.
No, I agree.
Yeah, and that's always the problem. Isn't if he was just a guy, no one would remember him. It'd be just what it is, and he'd have been a 10-year journeyman. But because he was supposed to be the next superstar in a New York market, it became a big thing.
Was he always Debo of his generation? I'm kidding.
Yeah, a first ballot Hall of Famer. Good luck with that. Yeah. Nice try. Good luck with that. I mean, I think you're really struggling with this argument. The guy is already going to the Hall of Fame. He could just retire now and be done with it. He did tie Mays today too.
What's that?
He tied Willie Mays for home runs today.
Yeah, I'm just bugging.
Yeah, well, you're not gonna bug me. I got my cards. I'm good. But the interesting thing going forward for a lot of it, to your basic point about the market though, is that unfortunately, we're gonna. The good news for me, I actually think, is going to be. I love this reference because this was a good one too. Also, this one was a New York Yankee one. The Kevin Maas 1990 Leaf. That's a good reference. I love that one, Joe. That's a good one.
We used to have argument on how to say his last name.
I say Maas. That's what I go with. That's what I'll stick to. Hold on. Here you go. Gotta go to sleep. Go to COMC first and get a Palfy. Dude, it's happening. It's happening, Ameet. At least from Josh. At least he'll buy one. But
our viewership of 1. We just lost our viewership.
Yeah. I got the numbers in front of me. I think you're still all right. But the interesting thing is going to be that I actually kind of want to see. Like, I'm morbidly curious when and if we do get that correction, how many people jump ship right away. Because that's what we're going to find out. We're going to find out the truth. That's kind of the thing I alluded to, Jeremy, with the episode last night and to other conversations I've had with other hobbyists. We're going to know the truth sooner or later. The problem is I don't have a timeline on it. I can't give you one. You can't give me one. We don't know what the impetus is going to be either. It's obviously not the economy. That's not going to do it. It's going to be something else. That something has to happen, that somebody that a lot of people put money into suddenly gets a reversal and it pushes money out of other markets.
It would have to be something like, okay, we have to think about what it would have to be. Like someone, let's use Trout as an example. Mm-hmm. So let's say Trout, and I would never want this on anyone, but let's say Trout got a DUI, ended up in prison. All those cards that people have bought, put millions of dollars into, are now suddenly they're not liquid anymore. Yeah.
Well, they'd be liquid, but they'd be liquid at like literally a fraction of the price.
So the one crazy thing about this market is you're putting your investment in a vehicle of something that can change in an instant, mm-hmm. right? It's not like a house where your house will appreciate. That's a bad example because a house it's not an inanimate object. Let's put it that way, mm-hmm. right? This person could do something really wrong the rest of their life, right?
Yeah. We got to say this in an ominous way, by the way.
Oh,
that's right. All will be revealed, Joe. You're right. That is 100% true. But that's kind of what we're alluding to. And Ameet's point is valid. We don't know. Look, here's the thing. So let me quickly, Alan, let me strip out all the jokes. Let me actually be serious about this for a moment. My problem with Trout is not that Mike Trout's not a good player. It's not even that he's not the best player of his generation, because he very well might be. Maybe he is. And if that's the case, I accept that. But here's the thing. I want to have this conversation in 5 years. I'd like to have this conversation in 5, because then I have a bigger track record to be able to assess. Because if he blows out his knee this year and he tears his ACL and his MCL, he doesn't have to go to a DUI and go to prison. He can tear his ACL and his MCL. His speed goes down. He becomes less effective in the outfield, so he's not a good fielder anymore. Maybe he can still hit, but maybe not as proficiently. So it's not like his career's over, but it suddenly declines. He's not an MVP candidate anymore. Can he coast off of the statistics he's built up until this point because he's off to a great start? But if I had $1 for guys that were off to a great start after a decade, there's a lot of guys. I'll use a favorite of mine, Albert Bell. Albert Bell was a tremendous player. If you take like the first decade or so of his career, he was basically a first ballot Hall. You knew he was a first ballot Hall of Famer. Knew he was a first ballot Hall of Famer until he wasn't. An injury pretty much put him out. There were guys who had longer careers where, again, they were right on the cusp of first ballot Hall of Famer. Carlos Delgado is a favorite of mine from Toronto.
Yeah.
You look at where he was at the end of his career, and if you're curious, don't take my word for it, please. Go to Baseball Reference. Go take a look at Carlos Delgado. Go look at how he played in his last full season for the Mets. He had 38 home runs. He had like 110 RBIs. He was still a very good, very great power hitter who could hit for average as well. Then he had a hip injury, barely played his last season, and then he had to retire. And he had 475 home runs. So he was like 85, 90% of the way to pretty much a guaranteed Hall of Fame career. Because one more good season, he hits 500 home runs. He's right there. And then we think about him a little different. But 475 or 473, I forget what the exact number is, we don't think about him. But it's like 473 is right there. And considering the amount of years, because he retired at like 35 or 36, so technically he had multiple years left to play, even as he was going to decline. He finishes off at 550, 560 home runs. He's an all-time great player who would be remembered fondly.
I think your argument is fair, but it applies not to just Trout. It applies to every person that's still playing.
It applies to every person that's still playing that hasn't played the amount. I'm comfortable with a player who, if their career ended now, is in the Hall of Fame. If a guy's career ends now and they're in the Hall of Fame, I think they're much stronger. They're in a more stable position for me. That's all I'm trying to get at here. If a guy's career ends right now and we're having to have a debate, it's borderline because it's like, well, he was great, but then I didn't get the second half. Griffey had a precipitous decline, but he got to play enough in the second half to get to the stats where it's like, I'm not questioning Griffey. I know he's a Hall of Famer because he still got to play just enough in the second half to get him to those 600 home runs, to get him to that stuff. So it's like, but then you remember the first half when he was transcendent. He wasn't transcendent in the second half.
From a collectability standpoint, or what do you like? Sorry, what is your? Are you talking about collectability standpoint or Hall of Fame career standpoint?
I'm talking about Hall of Fame career because collectability I can't quantify the same way. Collectability doesn't really matter right now. Zion Williamson is highly collectible, but he hasn't done anything. Like I can't. The two are not correlated necessarily. It's the same as what I said a few minutes ago about the economy versus the card economy. Right now, the connection is tenuous.
I just wanted to make sure you were actually referring to that and not to collectability, because then
I can't refer to collectability because it's an X factor. That's a completely different conversation.
I agree. Then in your case, I do agree with what you're saying. I just don't have any knowledge to say one way or another. To say like I don't know the sport enough to say with any degree of confidence. I think X, Y.
Yeah, but the problem is that collectability one is really hard to argue. Even if we go back to hockey, it's like, why are certain players beloved more than others if they have nearly identical stats? Why do we love certain ones certain way? We think about them this way. We think about the other one the other way. There is an intangible sometimes where somebody just resonates the right way. And you know what? We like them. Therefore, they've got the collectability. And if their stats back it up, it's even better. Because, like I said, Ken Griffey was a super popular pick. He was the star of the game. You're going with that with the stats and collectability on that one? That could be a thing. Maybe if you sign some copies and put it like an RPA, get the patch on there. You can certainly go about it.
Copies out in the universe, by the way.
What's that?
I do have signed copies out in the universe.
I believe that. So real quick here. So Joe was mentioning kind of what we were talking about as well. Or an injury to a player, yes. This is an interesting one. I like this. So Giannis seems to have regressed after Milwaukee got bounced. And yeah, I think part of that. So actually, let's talk about Giannis a little bit. How's your basketball, Ameet? I don't know too much about basketball, but I like this market because I've been studying this particular Giannis's cards. So we can talk about this from the collectability perspective because I think Giannis is a good case study for what you're just discussing.
Yep.
His collectability right now, like he's showing greatness. Yep. He will probably win the second straight MVP. So right now, the pieces are in place for potential greatness. We're starting off on a great start. But the playoff section of it isn't looking good. The last two seasons were not a good look in the way he went out. It's not that he lost, it's the way they lost.
Yep.
And we look at Giannis and we see that like you've got all these attributes. You've got all these things. And he's a likable guy and he's competitive and all these things are good. But then we have to start looking at that playoff. And the thing is he's still young. He could still fix this, totally turn this around. It's not too late. It's got plenty of time for that. But one thing that we learn, and this is where the basketball side does play into it as well, there are holes in his game that are being exploited by his opposition.
Yep.
His ability to fix that is also going to play part into his hobby long-term. Sure. So Paul's point is valid because right now we're looking at Giannis as, look at how great this guy is even with his flaws. But in the playoffs, we're seeing that flaw come into fruition.
But it's also awfully quiet from the people who are really high on him from a collectible point of view, saying anything right now.
Yeah. Well, he also did go up like a lot. Like as we had the COVID time, maybe a lot of the gains have already been priced in, and some of those folks are taking back some of it. Because one thing people have to remember with the market is sometimes people are like, okay, I've already made a lot of money on this card and I've got copies. Maybe I should sell a couple and take some of my gains. And that results in some sales, which also can bring the price down a little bit, even though they have copies in the back for themselves. So there could always be a little bit of profit taking that's 100%. Involved in adjusting the market.
100%.
Yeah, and Paul, that may also be part of it. Some people may have looked at it and want to get out of Giannis. That could be a total thing. That can definitely be a factor. But some other people are going to be like, you know what? Compared to what Giannis was at the beginning of the year, I'm doing great. And if I have a couple of copies, let me take some of this profit while it's here.
I agree.
Yeah. So it's a good example. I love it. So here we go. Let's see this. Greg Oden's moment of the hobby would ruin families. His is such a shame because he will never know what he could have been. Like it's hard to say, but like he was injured almost immediately. He never really got out of the blocks.
Derrick Rose is also in the same family.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be right back, Carlos.
No worries. Sounds good. So, guys, one thing I'll mention to you while Ameet's taking a quick breather and coming back, you are making some valid points. Like the Greg Oden example, let me just put it back on here. The Greg Oden example is a perfect one because, well, he was seen. Now, the thing is with Greg Oden, Joe, is that I think, and I'm going from memory, so forgive me, I'm not the biggest guy in basketball here, but I believe they did know that the potential was there for injuries to be a problem for him. So if you were a person who decided to kind of speculate in Greg Oden, you had to kind of factor in that risk a little bit. And this is where Greg Oden's an interesting one, because when I look at Zion Williamson, it's very hard for me. Does he show flashes of potential brilliance? Absolutely. Like, you see the athleticism, he's great. But he's barely played any games. And when he's played, they have to control his minutes. Why? Because they don't want him to get hurt, because they're scared and terrified of him getting hurt. And the question becomes, at a certain point, it's like, well, can I depend on you to be the man if at a certain point I need you to be playing big minutes, I need you to be playing big games? And right now, I have no track record. So, I was just comparing Zion to kind of the Greg Oden example, because right now Zion has barely played. And when he did play, they restricted his minutes because they were concerned about potentially re-injuring him. He might not have been fully in shape or something. And there's a little bit of that. So, like, could he be great? Sure. But he could also be injury prone depending on his ability to stay healthy and stay on the court. And right now we don't have the answer to that. There's so many like unknowns that make him a little scary.
Yep.
Yeah. And the other point I made just with the Greg Oden thing is I said, if somebody's speculating Greg Oden, you also have to know that coming in, I believe in the draft, I could be mistaken, please correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like he had a little bit of an injury history already. And like that was a risk factor if you were going to put some money into him, that you kind of had to at least take into account rather than throw all your money into him, maybe kind of consider it a little bit.
The people that have to worry are the ones that have all their eggs in that one basket, right?
Yeah.
Investment basket. If like the people that are hobbyists, they're busting packs and they're prepared to lose $200 on a pack of or $200 on a box of cards and get out of it anyways, right? The guys that are investing aren't buying packs; they're buying cards.
That's fair. So let's do this, Ameet. I got one more thing for you. Let's go down one more path here, and then I think we've had a pretty good stream, and we'll call it a day. Sound good?
Good.
So let's go down one more path since you mentioned the boxes. Obviously, the prices of boxes are starting to go up a little bit of that. At this point, like, unless you're really addicted to cracking wax, are we getting dangerously close to the point where it's like you are almost entirely 100% better off kind of sitting back and letting somebody else take the risk factor? Is there any reason why you would want to be cracking a ton of wax necessarily, especially something like basketball? We use basketball where the price is really inflated.
Yeah.
Would you even want to touch that necessarily?
Well, I just bought a punch, so I would say yes. I still want to buy. I've been buying
basketball or a different sport.
Basketball. I bought some. Did a deal to buy some basketball wax. Black.
Okay.
I am gonna.
What series?
Oh, it's a bunch of stuff. I got Commc.
Okay.
I got Mosaic. I think there's a bunch of other stuff that I got in there. So yeah, I'm gonna definitely buy it.
Okay, so you're that guy. You're that guy.
I love opening wax, man. Okay. I love it. I love it. I buy Walmart. The reason why Walmart is so good for me is I can do it from my computer, buy the box, it comes to my door, and I can rip it open and open it. Right? I don't have to travel to an LCS to buy a pack of cards. Right?
Okay.
I love it. So I'm feeling to help you here, but yeah.
Well, you don't have to help me. I'm not cracking. Listen, man. The closest thing I've done is cracking open some packs of MVP. Okay. I'm not playing. I love hobby packs, and I would love to open them, but I don't think the price point makes sense.
The price point does not make sense at all. Yeah. What we're paying. Like a box of Prism basketball is insane. The only reason I'm doing these blasters is because it's somewhat cheap. Mm-hmm. But I'm super I have kids, so.
Are you getting it for retail though?
What's that?
Are you getting it for retail price still?
Hell no. I'm paying more than retail.
Okay, so Ameet is a terrible example. He's the exact opposite of what I'm trying to get at.
I'm feeding the monster, right? But
you very much are that guy. You are literally the guy.
Yeah. But I have a limit, right? I have a budget. So I stuck within my budget. I'm sticking to that. But I love to break wax. I love opening cards, man. I can't help it. It's just who I
am. I do understand. That the reason I bought that MVP thing is that I still love opening packs, but I really just want to pay retail. I don't want to pay more than retail. I can't do it.
Well, I can't justify buying a hobby box of anything right now. Like there's a couple of guys I know really well that I buy boxes from, and I'm like, dude, I'm not paying $250 for a box. And we know those boxes are geared towards box breakers, right? That's the group breakers are why they're making these products. So I think to answer your question, yes, I'll break the wax myself, but does it make sense to have someone else break the wax? Yes, it does, Carlos.
As long as we've established that, that's fair. No, but the thing is, I'm in the same boat where, like, look, I wish I could open some hobby, because I'll tell you, Topps flagship was one of my favorites. Like, I still am a baseball fan. I still love baseball.
Yeah.
I have fond memories of opening multiple boxes. Even it was still kind of expensive for me because I didn't have a lot of money at the time. I was still in high school, but I crack open multiple boxes of like Topps 98, Topps 99, Topps 2000, because it was fun. It was a lot of fun to open it. But the hobby boxes were not too crazy. And I also knew some other collectors and hobbyists who would buy the case. So we get the case price, and you could buy individual boxes within the case. So we would be able to do a little bit better on price. But now it'd be very difficult to do. Like, you basically have, if you can't get it for retail, you're going to get absolutely killed, especially for some of the hotter products.
Yeah, and you will not get half of what you're supposed to get inside it. I mean, wax was affordable until Aaron Judge became the big thing.
So you want to put 2017 as the cutoff? Is that like the time when you really think it turned?
Judge's popularity for the reason why wax prices went stupid.
Okay.
Because I remember people couldn't get rid of. I don't remember what year Bowman now is. Someone in the stream can remember what year Judge's rookie was. You can tell me. But before that, people had product they couldn't get rid of. I remember seeing at the expo, people had signs on sale. Then Aaron Judge exploded, and those boxes of product went stupidly crazy.
And I think, if memory serves me, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Judge was already a couple of years older than most of the players that start. So it would have been like, what, 2014 or 2013 or something like that? It had to be something in that range, I feel like. Because the prospect one is like Bowman and Bowman Chrome and stuff like that. Those are the prospect cards.
I want to say 2017, but I'm not 100%.
Well, 2017 is when his Major League rookie is. That one I know for sure. That was his Major League rookie, because I had one of those and I sold it for a nice profit. I did well, especially when his price went back up a little bit. But no, I think one thing that I haven't quite gotten my head around, even though I observe baseball and I watch like the hobby side of baseball still quite a bit, I don't know what the obsession is with the Bowman Chrome prospect card versus like the Major League Baseball rookie card. And I'll use my guy Soto that I'm enjoying right now, like as a younger player. I would rather have the 2018 cards for Soto.
Well,
like, to me,
that's okay. So the limited knowledge I do have of baseball, so what Chrome is, now you have the equal opposite love affair for flagship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair.
So you have these Chromies, and then you have flagship, and some of these guys are buying both.
Mm-hmm.
Chrome. Some people, Chrome is it. It's got the first auto rookie, I think, in Chrome, right?
Mm-hmm.
Flagship doesn't have any auto anything. It doesn't. I don't think it has one hit auto maybe per box if you're lucky, but it's not an auto or memorabilia driven product.
But that's what used to make it more affordable, right? That's what used to be like, look, you're not going to worry about the hits necessarily. You're going to get a flagship rookie, and there were enough cards in the box that's like, there's a good chance you're going to get the rookie you're looking for. At least a couple of the good ones.
I agree.
Even if they're not the most expensive, you'll get a couple of them. You'll have a good shot at it.
Yeah.
But the other one was like, look, if you want the more premium one, there's other products for you that have the autograph version.
Also, Chrome grades well.
It does, yeah.
Right, absolutely. That's also a big factor. Like, of course, Chrome is beautiful. You can grade the living daylights out of that thing.
Mm-hmm. I like this though. When he was saying, I watch a lot of breaks. It's like you'll see Blake Lizotte, one described as fire. That is one of my favorite things. He's right. You're very right about that, Paul. And then here, rookies get their cup of coffee and wine up in Europe. True. And breaks, aka Waxboard.
Very true.
I can't blame Ameet though. I can't blame him because the urge to open the packs is strong. It's very strong.
If anybody knows me at Expo, me and my buddy, we sit there and we open up pack after pack after pack, and there's garbage all over our floor. Well, don't tell Jeremy I said that, but there's garbage on our floor. We pick up at the end of the day of all wax packs and boxes. We like to crack. That's just what we do.
They like to crack. Put that on a shirt.
I like crack. There's your tagline for YouTube.
I can't add anything to that. I feel like you've done it for me.
You add the word "to." That's just
mm-hmm.
Place it in.
I got to quote it properly, Ameet. You already said it correctly the first time. But no, that's the thing. That's fair. And I think what makes the whole thing interesting is that I understand the manufacturers. I don't blame them for adjusting their prices. I don't blame them for going to a more distribution model. One thing that we discussed on the call that we did. Let's end on this one. One thing we discussed on the call, and we can little bit kind of flesh out our thoughts on this, one of the things I was talking to you about, and again, it's something I'm keeping an eye on because I need more reports. I can't just take the little bit of rumors I've heard and just make that a fact. That it's not. But I do think, and I said it to Jeremy last night when we were doing that stream, is that I genuinely believe that for some of these Walmarts and Targets and whatever in the States and stuff like that, there's got to be a time where they're looking at people losing their minds over this retail and basically stocking shelves and like bothering the employees and everything. And it's like, is this worth it for like a relatively low margin product? Is this worth the amount of space it takes up, the nuisance it's creating for us? The distributors are getting harassed, followed to the parking lot and junk like that. And that's not acceptable. That's not cool. It's not good.
Yeah.
But then they're like, look, do we even need this in our lives as the retailer? Like, is it worth it for us? That's not the question.
It makes complete sense, and people become a little obsessive about trying to get those wax packs. I know that I've gone to Walmart to look for things in the past, and I see the same guy sitting there with his little weight scale trying to weigh the packs. Which one does it?
That's got to be irritating, though, if you're the retailer, because you know what? Like, we got customers who are buying stuff normally. You want something, just grab it off the shelf and go to the cashier like a normal person. Just go buy your stuff and leave.
And you know, if that's sad, that I'll tell you one thing. If it's sad that it goes that way, because I'm telling you right now, like, I'm probably gonna get in trouble for this from someone, but every person I talk to that owns a hobby store is always blaming distributors for jacking up the prices within one day of selling a product. So the distributors are making money. I'll use, like, there's a couple of products that have come out that jump 30-40% a day after release because apparently they're sold out and all of a sudden they get more.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So if that's the case, then the distributors are making all the money, are going to lose out too, because then the manufacturers themselves are going to sell it off their website. Look at Panini first off the line. What's it called? Panini, or the top?
Well, Panini's first off the line, I think.
First off the line? So people they're already selling it off their site. Distributors are going to lose it. They're not going to get the product. They'll just go through the manufacturer channels. Right?
Exactly. So real quick, I just want to acknowledge this. Slow Pitch Fanatic, thank you. So first Bowman Judge was 2013. That was like his prospect card. And then the flagship is 2017. So that sounds about right, because I knew there was a gap. I knew for him it was an unusually large gap between his prospect card and his actual flagship rookie. There was a gap there quite a bit.
Somewhere in between. That's Kent, by the way, my buddy Kent. But that's awesome. Between 2013 and before he got hot, people actually had so much wax, they didn't know what to do with it. I
believe it. Well, the thing though is, like, when a prospect starts to age, they tend to age in dog years if they don't get to the major leagues. Like, people lose patience. They're like, I guess this guy's a bust. And then, like, get rid of this junk. And then as soon as they get hot, they lose their, because he did hit 50 home runs. Yeah. And it looked like, oh my God, 50 home run guy.
He's a likable guy. He's a likable guy. He's in New York. So there's a lot of that.
Yeah, exactly. So those things came together right at the right time. But to your point is, yes, if that comes to pass and the retailers don't need it, then suddenly the distributors become a little bit redundant in this process, because the manufacturer's like, and here's the thing. Like, I've always discussed this scenario in the sense that they could charge the retail fee and make more money by just selling it directly themselves, of course. Or they could try to make it sound better for the customers and be like, oh, we'll knock the price down a couple of bucks, because they weren't getting that from the wholesaler anyway. So they'd still be making more money. If they wanted to try to make it sound like it's better, completely cut out the distributor and be like, all right, you're gone. I'm still going to sell it directly to the consumer. It'll look better for at least a little while until they bring the price back up. But they could play that game if they wanted to and sell out all their stuff that way directly anyway.
I feel bad saying this, but I just don't see distributors and hobby shops surviving this. I don't. I just can't see, because, like, if I was Panini, I'd totally, like, why would I watch someone else make $200 to $300 more of the product at retail when I can sell it at the market value myself on my own website, which they're getting anyways when their people are bidding on that first off the line.
Exactly. Yeah, because the reverse Dutch auction, right? So you've got different avenues they've come up with to sell the stuff anyway.
And Topps 2020 has proven the model.
Yeah.
Topps 2020, everyone's looking at, oh, it's a really cool, unique art meets the hobby brand. No, man, they found a way to perfect the capitalist nature of the business to sell cards to not only sports card collectors, but hobbyists that like art and cross-sell. Topps 2020 was a success, not because of the cards or what they're worth, is what Topps could pull off.
Yeah, and it sends some lessons for Topps to go forward in the future. It sends messages to Panini. It sends messages to Upper Deck and say, guys, there's a model here that if you do it right, and now for them, the lesson they got to learn is you got to make sure you got your distribution on lock, because they weren't ready when things really scaled up. But if their distribution and their channels are ready to go and they can send product out, it's a money making machine.
And the other thing you could do, if Panini really wanted to, and they didn't have to deal with Walmart would be like, you know what? Why don't you just pay for the rights to have my name, and you can create a Walmart version of your product, but sell it on your site. We can sell the online version on our site. It doesn't have to come into my shop, but I get a cut of the name.
Yeah, then it could go straight to the warehouse and never hit the retail floor. There are ways, but I think these companies are going to start having to look at that, because why waste the retail space?
Yeah, and why waste a physical product?
That's accurate. I think that's good. So I think that's a good one to go off on. Thank you, Ameet. That was really good. So everybody, thanks to Ameet, of course, for coming on, and we were able to kind of have a little bit of fun going through a couple of different topics, talking a little bit of COMC, talking a little bit of hobby here at the end. And thanks to everybody in the chat who's been hanging out with us, giving a lot of great comments and a lot of great questions and suggestions and different things that we could kind of talk to a little bit. But the reality is, and I got to finish on this one because this was I missed it the first time, but I don't want to lose it completely. We got to get it in there at the end. Very important. This is critical, key, absolutely. But no, thanks to Ameet for coming on. It was really good to be able to discuss a lot of this. And we don't have the final answers on a lot of these things. A lot of us is us speculating, but we're trying to use our experience. We're trying to use what we have seen, what we know, to at least try to talk through it. And guess what? The conversation isn't over. There'll be more as we go along, because we're going to keep watching. We're going to keep seeing what happens, and we're going to keep responding depending on how it goes. And I think that's the boat we're all in. All of us here in the chat, all of us here up here, and we're all going to be like that. So thanks everybody for checking it out. We're just a shade under 2 hours, so thanks. I think that's a perfect cutoff time.
Yep.
There'll be other videos on. If any of you missed some or all of it, you're also going to be able to check out this in archive very shortly. And before we go, I actually should have had it on sooner. My apologies, but I'll throw this on here real quick. Ameet's Instagram is on there, but I also include it in the description of the video, so you guys can check it out in multiple spots. So this is his Instagram that I got scrolling right there. So Titan Hockey, @TitanHockeyStick. So you can add him, and you can chat with Ameet a little bit as well if you want to ask any additional questions. Down the road here, if you put any questions in the comments section of the video itself, by the way, I will see them and I can certainly try to respond. And if you have any questions for Ameet or whatever, I can reach out to him and get an answer for him. Down the road, we will probably discuss again, because we have nothing better to do but to talk about this hobby.
Yeah, that's true. And I can do this pretty much every night, sadly. That's sadly? Yeah, sadly.
Oh, no, it's very sad. It's very sad.
Yeah.
Very, fair enough. All right. Thanks, guys. Thank you all for checking it out. So I'm going to call it a day here. And we'll catch you on the next live stream. I don't know when it's going to be, but we're definitely going to have another one down the road. And we'll kind of figure out as we go along who the next guest will be. But I'll try to give you guys enough notice so that you know what's going on. Thanks very much, and we'll catch you next time.
Cheers.